welcome to another episode of the Grizzlies Cave. This is Grizzly Andrew, and I have two very special guests with me tonight. And this is actually a special episode of Grizzlies Cave. This is Grizzlies Cave Goes Mobile. But before I introduce my guests, I want to plug a couple things that I've been plugging on my previous episodes. First is the GoFundMe account. It is Help Ben Build a Future for Indie Wrestling Stars, and the link is gofund.me/9B as in boy, 2, F as in Frank, C as in Charles, 903. And folks, like I've stated in my TikTok videos as well as other episodes, we definitely need to keep independent wrestling alive as long as we can. Any donations would be greatly appreciated. Also, I want to plug the next NAW wrestling event. It will be this Saturday, March the 8th at 7 p.m. Doors will open around 6 or 6:30. Concessions will be available. Ticket prices are as follows. Ages 0 to 5 get in free. Ages 6 to 12, $5. And then anybody that is 13 and older, it'll be $8. It is a family-friendly promotion, and if you, hope to see you all out there, and I promise you will not be disappointed. All right, without further ado, I want to introduce my two guests that I have tonight. One of them I've known for almost 12 years. And if you listen to my previous episode with Steve Hudgens, one of the co-founders of Big Biting Pig Productions, I actually met my next guest on the set of The Caretakers during the first night that we filmed. And you all heard me say my story when I first met him, but as I got to know him, found out he was a really great guy. And I also have his son here that's present with me, who is currently training to eventually make his debut in the ring, God willing, in the near future. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Ben Johnson and his son Trevor.
Good evening. Hello, everybody. Hey, what's up?
Hi, how's it going?
Guys, it is an honor and a privilege. I know I say that with all my other guests, but I mean that wholeheartedly. It's an honor and a privilege to have y'all on an episode of the Grizzlies Cave.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. We very much appreciate it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So, guys, there's no set platform. If you've heard my episodes, nothing really formal. We'll just talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'll ask some questions. Y'all feel free to chime in. And if y'all have anything to say, I'll chime in as well. But so, Ben, you heard, you told me you listened to the previous episode with Steve Hudgens and found out some other information about you that I didn't know.
All kinds of dirty secrets coming out this week.
That is, gotta love podcasting, right, buddy?
Indeed.
So, I've mentioned to the audience when I first met you, we were cast as the henchmen to basically collect the bodies for the vampire, basically. And
Oh,
when
Hank and Ike.
you were Hank, was that your name?
And you were Ike.
Yes, I
Or
was.
was Craig Ike?
No, I think he was Ike. I was Langford.
Yeah, you were Langford. I was Hank.
Okay,
And Craig was Ike. Yeah.
yeah. And man, just those couple of days that we filmed, man, it was so awesome and amazing to be able to work with you and Luke Short as well. We got to give him a plug because he was part
Yes, I
of it as
miss
well.
Luke. Luke was so much fun to work with.
Yes, sir. So when I met you, and I've told your son this during training session, I told him, I said, man, I said when I first met your dad, he just kept staring me up and down. I'm like, my God, is this guy sizing me up? Is he getting ready to kick my ass and stuff after we get done filming? I mean, I wasn't in bad shape. I was actually probably in the best shape of my life, and I'm like this big scary biker looking guy, but I'm thinking he's getting ready to throw down on me and stuff. So yeah, that was my first impression of you because we hadn't actually talked. So
Well, you're not wrong. Just go ahead and put that rumor to rest. I'm military background. And anytime that I'm in a situation that I'm not familiar with or around people that I don't know, it's it's just the trigger goes off and I immediately got to check all the entrances, the exits, and see what's in front of me and who's in front of me and start identifying things and I didn't know it was that really that obvious and that's why I kind of played around with it. I told you it's my love language.
Well, and well, since you mentioned military background, what branch did you serve in?
I actually served in two.
Okay.
I was working three jobs, one full time and two part time, and I was like, man, there's got to be a better way because my days would start at 5 in the morning. Sometimes I wouldn't get back at home and in bed till after midnight, and I was running myself ragged. So I was like, okay, well, let's just. I come from a military background of family. All of my dad's brothers were in one branch or another. My mother had a brother that was in the Air Force stationed in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I have a ton of cousins that were in the military, and everybody had either gone into the Army or the Navy or the Air Force,
Mhm.
both sides.
Sure.
Not a single Marine. So I had to basically make my own impression on our military lineage, and I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a Marine.
Okay.
So I was the first on both sides of my family.
That is awesome.
That was, do I have to give dates? It's going to give away my age.
It's up to you. It's up to you, boss man.
Timeless entity, right? So I was active duty Marine Corps from 1994 to 98, which is funny because right after I came home in 98, I went right back to one of those jobs that I had. It was something secure that I could fall back on, back to flipping steaks at Ponderosa, which would reintroduce me to a fellow that I grew up with when I was going to school, elementary school. I think we met somewhere around middle school. But there were two really close friends of mine, and when all this comes together, it's going to blow your mind. Uh, One guy named Dale Belcher lived about 3 blocks away from me, and on the adjacent street that run parallel with the one that I lived on was Gator McAllister.
Oh wow.
So, if you're not familiar with who Dale Belcher is, Dale Belcher is Ox Harley.
Okay.
So we're all in my backyard, in Gator's grandma's backyard, and down in Ox's yard wrestling. It wasn't backyard. We didn't have a ring. We were lucky if we had garden hoses strung up between a few trees, and it was all a shoot back then.
Mm-hmm.
So when I left and went into service and came back, Gator and his wife were having dinner at the restaurant that I was working at, and here I was, fresh out of the Marine Corps, in pretty good shape, tremendous cardio, and he invited me out for a tryout
Mm.
because they had the pain station out there on just before you get to Anton, out on Highway 70 there,
That's awesome.
and that began my training into the wrestling business.
Okay.
Then, as that would progress, oh man, we're talking. Let's see, I trained for just over a year, but I was working. I had a upset in between jobs, which sent me down to Gallatin, Tennessee, with a friend of mine
Mm-hmm.
while I'm training. So
Yeah.
I would come back and train when I could, and then I'd go back down there, and I was working for him. And me and my buddy Ivan Childers, big pop out to me, one of my best friends. And so we're driving around Gallatin, Tennessee one day, and we cruised right by I think it was it was either the Legion Hall or the VFW Hall in Gallatin. There's this big sign out in the front yard says live pro wrestling every Saturday night. And I was like, hey man, it's Friday. Can we come check that out, tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, I'd love to. So we go down there. Good show, great show. A lot of talented kids. And I'm eyeballing the room, and I'm trying to figure out, well, this blonde headed guy keeps coming across and going and talking to the old man in the corner. And then he'd go back out off scene or off screen. A little bit later, after the next match or something, here come the blonde headed guy. And then he'd go away. I was like, oh, I figured it out. So the blonde headed kid is the booker. The old man over here in the corner, he's the promoter.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go talk to these guys, I'm going to go, I know who's who. A little bit later that night after the show was over, I walked up to, and I remember his name is Tim, but we're talking 1999, and I forget his last name. And shame on me for doing that. I should have wrote it down somewhere. And I told him who I was, where I was from, how long I've been training, and I hadn't even had my first match with the company that I was training with yet.
Okay.
But I'm in Tennessee.
Right.
No licenses, no commission.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's pretty much the wild, wild west down there.
Sure.
And he's like, "Yeah, kid, I'll take a look at you. We're actually having their training sessions were on Sunday after the show,
Mm-hmm.
so he invited me out. I came out at a specific time, which was a little later in their training. They've been there for a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I come out, introduced myself. He introduced me to everybody, and he said, "Well, did you bring your pads with you?" I was like, "Sure." So I threw my pads on.
Mm-hmm.
I climb up into the ring, and one by one, all of his trainees that were there got in the ring with me. We worked a spot or two with each one of his guys, and so then he gets into the ring. After I done wrestled a few spots with all of his guys, he climbs up into the ring with me, and now he starts calling multiple spots, in repetitious, fast order. And oh man, it was one of those days where all the planets aligned because I was hitting everything. I mean, it's just spot on. And the old man came out from behind the back wherever he was hiding and walks up to him and he grabs him by the leg and he says, "Are you going to book this kid or do I have to?" And it was funny. Tim looked at me, he kind of laughed. He said, "Well, I got a spot for you Saturday night if you want it. What do you call yourself?" And at that time, I didn't have a character. I didn't have a gimmick. I didn't even have a pair of wrestling boots. All I had was my training knee pads and elbow pads.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. So I looked laying there in the seat right next to my bag is my University of South Carolina Gamecocks ball cap that I had wore down there. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, just just call me the Carolina Kid."
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna run with that for a little while, and that's actually where I got my start in the wrestling business. But I was still coming back to Madisonville and training under Gator and Lisa McAllister out there. And then the job fell out, and I was like, "Well, I know that me being prior service, I'm pretty much guaranteed I'm going to go back into the service with the rank that I got out at. I'm going to get to choose my duty station, and that's not a bad gig considering there's all the benefits of being military service member." And Trevor was about three
Mm-hmm.
three and a half years old at this time. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to get too far away from home
Sure.
because that's what brought me back home. I
Mm-hmm.
was all the way down in Jacksonville, North Carolina when he was born, and I was actually in Jacksonville when he was being born. I got the phone call that they were going to the hospital, and doggone it, I missed his birth by 45 minutes. When I touched down in Nashville, he was full breech, so he was not breech, but I mean he was
Sure.
he was kicking down doorways.
I
So
got you.
um, so I went back and I milked the Army recruiter for about 3 steak dinners, listening to his snake oil pitch.
Uh-huh.
Because you know how recruiters are. And if anybody out there is listening and you're thinking about joining the service, go talk to a vet. Go talk to someone who has been in your shoes, preferably a family member. These recruiters are going to make all kinds of promises and none of them are going to come to fruition. Okay? It's a snake oil pitch.
I've got a good one for you, but I'll circle back to that.
As if the military didn't have a hard enough time getting their numbers up right now. So, um, so finally, I just set him down and I was like, "Okay, so this is our third steak dinner date," and he was wanting me to pull the trigger pretty hard, all recruiters do. And I just looked across the table from him and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna kill this rib right now." I was like, "What can you do for prior service?" and you could see the life just leave his eyes. All the all the all that glint was gone, and he took a deep breath, and he's like, "What branch?" And I said, "Marine Corps." He's like, "You could have told me." And I was like, "I could have. I couldn't have got 3 steak dinners out of you, but I could
Mhm.
have told you." And well, long story short, everything that I said was true, and I knew that they had CH-47 Chinooks down here at Fort Campbell.
Mhm.
I worked on CH-46s and the little 3-wheeler Bumblebee helicopters in the Marines, and I didn't know if my MOS would cross right over or not, or if I'd have to go back to T school, I think they call it in the Army, or
Mhm.
any kind of training. No, no, everything crossed over. I was quite literally a civilian that morning and trying to in process the 101st Airborne Division, largest division that the Army had at the time, and then civilian clothes.
Oh wow.
Oh, that was a magnet.
Mhm.
Every officer that I came into contact with wanted to know who I was, that I'm in processing the 101st Airborne Division in civilian attire.
Hmm.
And I haven't got my initial issue yet. I don't have a uniform. I don't have a dog tag. I don't have a pair of boots.
Mhm.
Nothing. Literally, quite literally, the civilian clothes, tennis shoes, jeans, shirt that I was swore. I went down to the MEP station in Nashville, raised my hand, and swore my oath again. Don't understand why they had to do that because I was never asked to rescind it.
Right.
But here I go, off into the wild blue yonder, so to speak. So that was kind of interesting. So one really highly motivated lieutenant decided he was going to see me over to CIF, Central Issue Facility,
Mhm.
and made sure I got some uniforms, made sure I knew where to go get my name tapes and rank and all that stuff sewn on so that I could properly in process.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, I'm still training.
Mhm.
I spent, aside from the time that I was deployed to Afghanistan, I spent 2 nights on Fort Campbell.
Really.
Yes, that was it in 4 years.
Wow.
Well, I had a place here, so I would commute from Hanson all the way to Fort Campbell every day.
Yeah.
And get there at 6 o'clock in the morning for PT.
For those that don't know the distance or the time frame, could you tell the listeners how far of a drive and time it took?
That's 45 minutes straight through if you don't run into traffic at the gate. Because generally that early in the morning, everybody's trying to get on the post, civilians, military, and it can be quite the traffic snarl.
Mhm.
So I usually left the house about 4:30 in the morning.
Oh, geez. Well, before I forget, because my memory is crap, but thank you for your service.
Oh, I appreciate it.
And it's awesome to be able to talk to someone that serves. So definitely thank you for your service. I know when I had that episode with Coy last week, he told me he had served in the Navy, and I didn't know that about him, but I made sure to thank him for his service. Um, so you said you went to Afghanistan.
Oh yeah,
How long
yeah.
were you there for?
Ooh, total, I think 18 months.
Okay.
I did 2 tours,
Yep.
and on my last one, it was a short tour because um, my ETS date was coming up pretty quick, and I wasn't staying in.
Hmm.
So, before we get to Afghanistan, um, I did get licensed in Kentucky.
Okay.
So I wasn't working Gallatin, Tennessee anymore, even though it would have been a shorter drive for me. I was just wore out physically,
Sure.
and so I'm working. I wasn't working yet because technically I was still training, but I was no. We're in, okay, so yeah, I got licensed, so I'm working, uh, and this was the good days because me and Ox had partnered back up, and we had Chuck Lowry, Charles Emmett, and we were all running, and oh man, the road stories I could tell you from that one. We were working we were working a show for Battle Zone Wrestling. I think it's Joe Bad to the Bone Wrestling. Excuse me. I think that was Joe Bailey's promotion back then. God rest his soul.
Mm.
And JC, if you're out there and you're listening, I loved your dad. I love you. Hope everything's going good for you. We're working in the Muhlenberg County Agricultural Complex
Okay.
before it got concreted. We're talking dirt floor,
Mm-hmm.
straw all over the floor. And Saturday morning, they had just had a livestock auction, and Chuck is working. Chuck is working that Arab gimmick of his, and he's running around barefoot, playing hopscotch, trying to dodge cow patties that are in the dressing room. Ox is over there laughing his ass off. I can't keep it in. And to this day, I still bring that story up whenever I see Charles, and he just shakes his head and starts cussing about that. It was the funniest stuff, man.
Um,
So, uh, but I did do some work for Battle Zone Wrestling, um, where I got to meet Junk Pile the Clown, Corporal Robinson. Um, that's one of the first shows where that I worked that Doug Gilbert was on,
okay.
and man, we had a lot of good times. A lot of good times. I was working for Randall Conrad, who has left us recently. Respect to that family. And Kenny Cotton had his promotion going with Ermit Matney. That's how I met Travis and Paul, and got tied in with them.
Okay.
So we're running around, we're doing all this, and man, I get that opportunity. That phone call came in. Um, it was it was right during the time after September 11th happened, and my first deployment.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity to go to Laredo, Texas for a one night show, over to Albuquerque, New Mexico for a Saturday night show,
Oh wow.
Mexico City, Mexico for a Sunday afternoon live television taping
Mm-hmm.
deal, and then they were going to fly me back to Nashville Sunday night. But the date for that weekend, those shows were on the other side of my first deployment date. So kicked all that off to the side, and I have absolutely no regrets in doing so because, um, just like every other patriotic American service member at the time and veterans, we all heard and heeded that call, and
Mm-hmm.
man, I had a good time in Afghanistan.
Good.
I had a blast. I hated leaving my kids, but I had a blast,
Sure.
and that's where Trevor and I really started losing a lot of our connection. I'm on the other side of the world, trying my best not to get my hind end shut off,
Sure.
and having grown up with a dad that couldn't always be there for me when I needed him, I just thought that the distance that I maintained would be better for him instead of me coming, in and out and in and out. But it really didn't. So we
Sure.
just tried to maintain it as well as we could. And when I got home off of that first deployment, it was that was right around the time frame that you decided you were going to get into Granny's frozen grapes.
Oh God,
That story. We want to pull that one out.
yeah, that story. Why not? Why
Okay.
not?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to hand that over to him, yeah, go ahead.
To be honest, I don't quite remember a lot of it. I was still pretty young. I think I was what 6, 7 at that time, maybe, yeah, give or take. Um, but we were just enjoying some time as a family down there, and somehow or another, I got my hands on a bag of frozen grapes. And I love grapes, love fruit. I'm pretty much a garbage disposal. I'll eat it.
And she would wash them and roll them in the grape Kool-Aid so they got crusted on the outside. Oh, these things were delicious. And then she put them in the freezer.
Mm.
They got
Well,
frozen solid and like hard as a rock. So you could just like kind of like suck on them for a bit, wait for them to thaw They were great, great. But me being me, the squatty little ADHD ridden kid running around all over the place, I got ahead of myself and I ended up inhaling one of these grapes and getting it lodged in my esophagus and
Oh,
choking on that.
damn.
And somehow or another, I managed to get. Was I sitting on the counter whenever you saw me, or was I on the floor?
You had gotten down off of the counter because where I was sitting on that couch with the coffee table in front of me, looking down that hallway to the left, you came out of the kitchen and into my plain view. And when he steps into plain view, the internet, both hands up close to his neck, the international sign of I'm choking,
Mm-hmm.
and I destroyed whatever was on top of that coffee table.
Oh man.
Okay, so a little bit of backstory. I was a combat lifesaver in Afghanistan.
Right.
So all of my adrenaline start. I just kicked. I launched everything off at the coffee table, and I'm at full sprint going 20 feet
Mm-hmm.
to this kid, and I didn't hit the brakes. I hit my knees as I came into the kitchen with that slick linoleum floor,
Oh.
and and I guess I had just enough drag on my right side. It turned me. So as I go past him, I hook him right with my right hand, right my right arm around his side, and I brought my left hand right, and I start doing the Heimlich maneuver on him. I had hit this kid like 6, 7 times, and finally on that last one, boom! I mean that joker launched, bounced across the kitchen floor,
Mm.
and I looked at him, and his face was already starting to turn. It was no shit the scariest moment of my life, and I just came back off a deployment in Afghanistan.
Man.
I'm taking dudes out of the back of the helicopter, arms missing, legs missing, body missing. Sometimes, not to get too grotesque, but
You're good.
it would not be enough to fill up a coffee can.
Right.
It's just a bag,
Mm-hmm.
and um, now I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
When I came down off of that adrenaline rush, I was zapped for 2 days.
Really.
It scared me to death,
Yeah.
absolute to death. But all right, let's get off of that.
That was the first time you shot on me.
Yeah.
That was not a work. He was laying in.
So when we come, we come back, to being in Afghanistan. So I went away for my second tour. Come back, and something had changed. Something had changed in me. Something about wrestling altogether, and I don't know if it was my time over there, or if because now we're transitioning out of the what was that, the Degeneration X era into the what was it, the Attitude Era with the
Um,
WWE
that let's see. DX was
2001
DX was Attitude Era.
three.
So around 2002, they were
Yeah,
transitioning to the Ruthless Aggression.
There you
ruthless
go.
aggression.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm out of the army in 2003, back home on American ground, kissing it, having a
Mm-hmm.
good time. But something in me had changed, and I really didn't return to the world or to the business on anything that even remotely resembled a full time basis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I worked a couple of different angles um, as a baby. Um, did the Kentucky coal miner gimmick for a little while, um, and that was a lot of people thought that was a work. That was a shoot. That was daily life down in coal mines,
Mm-hmm.
and I even put a little bit of baby powder on the outside of my clothes to
Mm.
simulate rock dust and
There you
stuff
go.
like that. So whenever I took a bump, poof, you get this big. Looks like somebody just landed in the rock dust hole.
Right.
Um, it was fun times. Did some tag team stuff with Rough Rider Roy
Mm-hmm.
as the Rough and Ready Rodeo Company. Those were
Okay.
some good times because back when I was in the Marines, I got to, to doing a little bit of rodeoing on a dare. Yeah, dude, he's looking at me like my mom looked at me when I told her I was riding bulls. So I'm stationed out in Southern California, and uh, learning how to work on helicopters. And I had two roommates, Mike Hughes from Charleston, South Carolina, and Chris. Don't remember Chris's last name, but anyway, Chris was from Oklahoma, so he was the cowboy. Um, Mike grew up in a different lifestyle. So him and he was more acclimated to the biker world,
Mm-hmm.
and that's as far as I'm going to take that story.
Sure.
Because I made a few trips home with Mike in Charleston, South Carolina. And those stories I will take with me to my grave.
Duly noted on that.
Good times, though. Good times. So, Chris is going out to Meisner. This is back when it was just Meisner. It wasn't Meisner and Son. It wasn't Meisner and Sons. It was just Meisner's Rodeo Arena.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know nothing about no Meisner. I've lived in Kentucky through, almost all my life,
Right.
except for the first 8 years in which I was born and raised in Chicago, as Steve brought up. Um, and Steve, if you're listening, you did a killer job on this podcast. I really enjoyed listening to y'all talk to business, and you brought up uh, some old school stuff. You're talking about Vern Gagne and Greg and all of the what we know is today is the WWE legends, um, trailblazers were the regulars on the
Mm-hmm.
show.
Right.
You know, um, and it was so we're watching wrestling about the same time frame, just didn't even know it.
Right.
And um, where was I? Meisner and Sons. So anyway, thank you. So we're out there watching Chris ride, just going out to support our roommate
Mm-hmm.
and having a beer or two. And Mike said something to me that you did not say to me when I was 20 years old. He says, "You ain't got the brass to go try to ride one of them bulls." And I just looked at him, and I looked back at the lady who was down there taking people's money and getting them to sign the waiver so they don't go to prison for doing that or get sued, whatever. And I said, "Hey, how much to ride your bull?" And she said, $10. And I looked at Mike and I said, "Give me that 20."
Mm-hmm.
That's what he said. He said, $20 says you ain't got the brass to go ride one of the bulls. I said, so I'm like, "Give me that $20. So he pulls it out. I take it right over to that lady, give her half of it, put the other half in my pocket. I climb over the chutes, go find Chris so I can borrow his gear.
Mm-hmm.
Never been on anything ranker than a trail horse at Dawson Springs back when they still had the trail rides going on. And I'm going to go get on a bull.
Mm.
I want you to remember this because a little bit later in the story, it's going to get really, really interesting and it all stitches together.
Okay.
So I get on this bull. Chris, let's put some spurs on my feet. Got me a rope and a glove, and I'm climbing in on top of this. I didn't know what the heck kind of cow this was, bull this was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know nothing. I was just a stupid, ignorant 20-year-old kid, right? Just knew that going to the Marine Corps was a better way of living than 3 jobs.
I heard that.
3 squares a day. They fed me. They clothed me. They taught me a trade that I'm not using today. But anyway, um, so I get down on top of this big, white, beautiful Brahma bull, big hump in his back and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I will never forget his name. They called him Radar.
Oh, geez.
Oh, he was massive. He was enormous. He was just this big, beautiful, 3,500 pounds of pure pissed off USDA prime beef.
Right.
Gorgeous animal. And stupid me looks over at the guy holding on to the gate, the only thing that was keeping me alive and on top of this thing at the time. And I told him to open it up. Well, about 2 seconds later, I'm laying in a heap of dust and God only knows what.
Oh man.
And this pretty light white Brahma bull just bouncing away with my buddy's rope. But my heart was about to explode inside of my
Sure.
chest from the adrenaline, the rush.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks later, I've got my own spurs, my own rope, my own glove, my own cowbell, and I'm doing this on a regular basis now. Me and Chris are loading up, and that was it. And of course, I still don't know how to ride these cotton picking things yet. You just
Right.
climb on, hold on, and just hope for the best.
Right.
And we've been going out there for weeks now, and I actually made it to the other side of the arena where the gate was, where the rest of the gate pins were up. So I knew I was getting better.
Mhm.
Right about that time, I ran into a guy, a real good friend of mine named Cy Oarsman, and so Cy started taking me under his wing and teaching me things. And I think he was from Minnesota, Oklahoma, North Dakota, somewhere. I think Minnesota at the time, and still good buddy. We haven't talked in a while, but so he started taking me underneath his wing, started actually teaching me how to apply what's going on. So this is a few years before he come along.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started getting better, and I started making it to the buzzer, and but I'm out there in California by myself, no family, nobody I knew, you know. But I had one aunt, my mom's sister. God rest her soul. And she comes down to watch her nephew ride the bull down here at Meisner's Rodeo Arena in Norco, California.
Mm.
And I got knocked out.
Mm.
Oh, this bull comes out the chute, wraps up real tight to the left, and at the time I was riding right-handed, so that's into my hand, but not to get too technical here, but if you're right-handed, a lot of guys want to ride with their left hand because you're actually faster on your dominant side.
Okay.
For balance purposes, like I said, this is only about my 19th, 20th bull of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know nothing at the time.
Sure.
And I fell off into the well, which is the circle, the eye of the storm in the middle of this bull that's spinning around and kicking. Okay, that's called the well.
Did not know that.
But I was lucky enough. I hit the back of my head on the ground before he steps on my face. So I was actually knocked out and unconscious when this bull's hoof comes around and steps on my face.
Oh my God.
Steps on my face to the point where I think the split of his hoof come down across both eyes from my forehead.
Oh wow.
Because I had road rash on the bridge of my nose, on both sides of my nose, 2 black eyes, and a pretty good raspberry across my forehead. Almost a perfect impression of this bull's hoof. But I was lucky. I guess I was lucky. I was unconscious, so my body just rolled with it.
Sure.
Not a broken nose, not even a fractured nose, not a crushed skull, no eyeballs popping out, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So all I remember of that was telling somebody if they're gonna waste a beer, pour it in my mouth, not in my face, because they were more concerned about washing the dirt and the whatever out of my face to make sure I didn't need stitches or anything. And my poor aunt is sitting out there watching all this go down. My mother didn't come out to California until that following Thanksgiving, and I did not go bull riding with my mother in California.
Okay.
So, so I wake up in the back end of a pickup truck. Of course, I'm dreaming. I'm flying above the trees, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I started coming to myself, and I was like, what the hell am I doing laying in the back seat of a pickup truck?
Mm-hmm.
Why is my shirt unbuttoned? Why is my chaps off? Why is my boots off? I got to get dressed. I got to ride. And then all of a sudden it hit me as, you did ride. And I'm like, oh, this has got to be bad. So I cruise over to the side of the truck, and I look in the mirror and I see, okay, I got two black eyes. I felt my nose; it was tender, but it wasn't broke. So I started recomposing myself, getting dressed, and here comes my aunt. And she's like, "Oh, I'm so worried about you." And so I get orders to later on that year. I get orders to Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Marine Medium Helicopter Squadron 162, the Golden Eagles, at Marine Corps Air Station, New River. And I figured my bull riding days was over. I'll probably never see a bull in North Carolina. I didn't see none in Kentucky, and I just didn't figure it would ever happen again
Mm-hmm.
until I found the country bar right outside of the base,
Mm-hmm.
the Tar Heel Opry House,
Okay.
and that's where all the Kmart cowboys were hanging out. But of course, the real cowboys. That was pretty much the only country bar in Jacksonville, North Carolina at the time, so everybody was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started listening, adjusting to that environment, and I found out where the riding arena was, who the bull riders were, and who the Kmart Cowboys were. So then I started picking my new friends, and I'd go talk to them, and ended up going out to on Sunday afternoon to the Onslow County Rodeo Arena, and that was Sunday. So by hanging out there, I found that there was the Seven Springs Double Deuce Arena
Mm-hmm.
in North Carolina. So they had practice nights on Wednesday, and every other Saturday they had jackpot rides.
Okay.
You throw a little bit of money into the pot,
Mm-hmm.
and then whoever got the best score at the end of the night get a little bit of money.
I've got to ask. You mentioned Kmart Cowboys. I'm going to
Mm.
assume that means fake cowboys.
No,
Okay, I've never heard the term Kmart Cowboys.
we'll just call them gimmick cowboys.
Gimmick Cowboys. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you watched any part of the episode of the series Yellowstone?
I have actually watched all 5 seasons except the second half of the fifth
Oh,
season.
so when the cowboys from the ranch go to town with Beth and Rip,
Mm-hmm.
and they start intermingling with some of the locals
Sure.
that are not much on the ranching part.
Okay.
They more like dress the part.
Okay.
So, and it's not just something you see on TV. They're not poking lightly or poking fun at something lightly. It's serious.
Mm-hmm.
At least it was back then.
Right.
If it's like no different than the skater world. You're either a skater or you're a poser.
Right.
Okay, you're either bull rider or you're a poser
Mm-hmm.
or a rodeo. But I mean, honestly, you got, what else was I supposed to do? I couldn't join the Navy. I couldn't join the Air Force. I couldn't join the Army because everybody else did. I had to go to the Marines. If you're
Sure.
going to rodeo, you can't rope, you can't break, you can't ride broncs or saddle or bareback or saddle bronc.
Mm-hmm.
I sure ain't barrel racing. So let's go big or go home. You got to ride bulls, right?
Right.
I was an adrenaline junkie, big time adrenaline junkie, and so anyway, now I'm riding bulls Wednesdays, Saturdays, Sundays,
Mm-hmm.
not just the Sundays. And actually, I'm getting pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making a lot of buzzers. I'm scoring good.
Yeah.
Top 5 runs. On jackpot nights. But I never did anything big as far as a season run
Okay.
because I wasn't at that level of development yet. And I'm getting beat up.
Mm-hmm.
The bulls are kicking my ass. I've got a pulled groin. I've dislocated my left shoulder a couple of times.
Oh man.
The doc had me on concussion protocol because 3 consecutive rides in a row, I landed what they call it, heels over kettle,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been just coming straight down on my head, jamming the vertebrae together in my neck.
Mm.
And the doc asked me one day. He said, "Mr. Johnson," he said, "Do you like enjoy the simple things in life, like, I don't know, walking, getting up to go to the bathroom, to stand up to take a pee?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Yeah." This doc lost all composure. He's like, "Stop freaking riding bulls." Like, okay, duly noted. Um, it got it got really bad there. Because I was at that point where I was dangerous. I could stay on long enough, but I didn't know when to let go yet.
Okay.
And anybody knows me knows I ain't got no quit in me.
Right.
So I had a butter bar lieutenant. That's a second lieutenant for any of y'all out there that don't know. Tried to run me up to see uh, if he could use the Uniform Code of Military Justice against me.
Are you serious?
Yeah. He told me flat out. He's like, "I am ordering you not to get on a bull," and I'm sure you can't give me that order. That's an unlawful order, and that is one unlawful order that I will not be obeying. And you guys know how Marines are about discipline. If any of y'all have any doubts about Marine Corps discipline, I encourage you, go watch A Few Good Men, and it lays it all out in there. And
Mm-hmm.
it is, I'm not going to say you're brainwashed, but you're freaking brainwashed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if before you go into boot camp, if you ran into the side of this house, you couldn't do it. You graduate boot camp, another Marine tells us, "Yeah, we're going to run through that house." You're going to see 60 freaking Marines splattered across that wall out there,
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to run through the house. I mean,
Right.
it's just the way it is. So this lieutenant tells me, "I'm ordering you to stop riding bulls," and I'm like, "Sir, this ain't going to happen." So Mr. Lieutenant says, "Let's go upstairs." Upstairs, there's nothing upstairs but your S offices, your sport offices, S1, S2, S3, your unit clerks, the executive officer, the commanding officer, and the sergeant major.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all who's upstairs. So we go upstairs, right into the sergeant major's office. He goes, he tells me to post outside, and I'm listening through a shut door to this sergeant major and this lieutenant discussing what's going on with one Lance Corporal Johnson. And things get quiet. Now down the hallway comes my XO and my CO. I'm thinking, damn, this is. I thought it was probably going to get handled with the smudge, but
Mm-hmm.
they done called the old man and his secretary in, so here they come, right down the hallway. XO slaps me on the arm. "Pow! How you doing, Lance Corporal Johnson?" "Very good, sir. How are you, sir?" "I'm great." Here comes the CO. Bam! Slaps me on my shoulder. "How you doing today, Johnson?" "Sir, I'm doing great, sir. How are you, sir?" you know.
Mm-hmm.
And into the sergeant major's office they go. I'm not saying we were buddies. I'm just
Right.
saying I was a poster Marine up until this point with this lieutenant. And then there's a bunch of jawing going on that I cannot hear all of. I'm just catching bits and pieces. Then the door swings open.
Mm.
Out storms the lieutenant. Exit stage left. Back downstairs he goes. Here comes the XO. Slaps me on my shoulder. Bam! "Have a good day, Johnson." Down the hallway he goes. Here comes the CO. Bam! Slaps me on the shoulder. "Have a good day, Johnson." "Yes, sir. You too, sir." Down the hallway he goes. And I'm still posted outside the Sergeant Major's office. And he says, "Johnson, you still out there?" And I said, "Yes, Sergeant Major." And he said, "Come on in here. Let's have a talk." So into the Sergeant Major's office I go. I did the full, snap to attention, salute. Lance Corporal Johnson reporting as ordered, Sergeant Major. He said, "No, knock that shit off. Just sit down."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I sat down. And there's this smug look across the face of my Sergeant Major. I couldn't put my finger on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he just folds his hands together, in front of his chest, leans back in his chair, and he looks at me and he says, "I would have never taken you for a bull rider."
Mm.
I said, "Well, it was something that got started out in Norco, California when I was stationed out in Tustin." And I told him the story. He wanted to know, so I told him everything you guys just listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "The lieutenant's not too keen on your bull riding, but you were right when you told him that was an unlawful order." He says the Marine Corps cannot prosecute one of their members over them participating in a sport that not only does the Marine Corps endorse, they also sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
And that blew me away sitting in that chair right there, because like I said, I've only been doing this for about a year now, so I don't know all this stuff.
Right.
He says, "Let me tell you a story." Oh, they endorse. The Military Rodeo Cowboy Association is
Really?
supported by, endorsed, sponsored by all branches of the military. And it's not to say, I think they have MRCA members only,
Mm-hmm.
but then they can also work toward points in their system at other events, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know the ins and outs of that either, but he said, "Let me tell you a story." He said, way back in WW there were 5 Marines that were stationed at 29 Palms, and they would travel with the rodeo company
Mm.
that was hauling the livestock up and down the West Coast to different events.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest stock contractor in Southern California. And these 2 young Marines, and he reaches behind his desk, right behind the chair that he was sitting in,
Mm-hmm.
and he brings this picture around and places it on his desk in front of me. And there's all 5 of these young Marines, privates, PFCs, Lance Corporal, so and so, and one private first class, Freddie Saavedra.
Mm-hmm.
These are the 5 Marines that started the West Coast Division of the Military Rodeo Cowboy Association.
Really?
The stock contractor, back when this got started, when my Sergeant Major was a PFC, now Sergeant Major Freddie Saavedra,
Mm-hmm.
who was a PFC when they started up the West Coast MRCA, is now my Sergeant Major standing right in front of me going to bat against this cocky lieutenant.
Oh, wow.
So he really picked the wrong day to FAFO.
Damn.
So the stock contractor at the time was old man Meisner.
Mm.
So old man Meisner passed the business down to his son,
Yeah.
who I encountered as Meisner, and now it's Meisner and Sons. I don't know if he's still alive or what at this point, but
Wow.
so that I told you it would all stitch together in this big continuous 30-year time loop.
Damn.
Yeah. So yeah, it was funny how all that came together. Well, they couldn't change anything about the UCMJ. They couldn't do anything about me. So I just continued doing what I was doing. I was having a damn good time doing it. In 1998, after I got out of the Marines, me and a good buddy that I was in the Marines with, I think I had to go pick him up. He was down in Homosassa, Florida. So on our way back, I just drove to Florida, picked up my buddy because he wanted to come back to Louisville. And we stopped in Jacksonville for a couple days and revisited, um, you know, the time, the places that we frequented, when we were stationed down there. And we went over to the old hangar where we used to work. And I don't know how the conversation got started with these young privates and PFCs, but something came up on the subject of bull riding, and one of the privates looked at Adam, who was also one of my riding partners at the time. He's like, "No, we can't do that no more." And I was like, "You can't what anymore?" And they're like, "We can't ride bulls anymore." I looked at Adam and I'm like, "It's only been a year since I've been out. Surely they didn't change the entire, you know, military rule book over me."
Right.
But it wasn't. They changed it. They added a clause into the squadron's rules and regulations, and it's called the Ben Johnson clause. No one is allowed to ride bulls if they're assigned to HMM 162.
You've got to be kidding
Oh
me.
no, I am not.
God bless, man.
So
Mm-mm-mm.
we're gonna get away from all that because well, it wasn't the last time that I would even get on a bull because what was it, 2011?
It would probably be, or yeah, around then, 2011, 2012, because it was a couple of years after the ice storm.
Yeah, about 2011. I Somebody came around and was wanting to know if I could teach them how to ride. Somebody that my mom had talked to that was wanting to get into riding, and so I went to no, that was the same time frame. So um, he invited us to go to. No, this is the second go round. This was 2000. It's got to be 2016, 2017, because the first one was, well, after I came home from the army and I spent some time out on the road. Tried to stay out of the coal mines. Ended up going to the coal mines when I came back from working in Beeville, Texas, when my dad passed. He fought cancer for 10 years, and it finally took him at the end. But I mean, he fought. He fought. He had days where he didn't feel his usual self, but he was a big fighter.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but yeah, man, sorry for the loss of your dad. So
I
my
appreciate that.
condolences on that.
So, oh yeah. So, um, mom called me. I was working for the Corpus Christi Army Depot in
Mm-hmm.
Beeville, Texas, and had a nice house that I was renting, maybe a mile off of the Corpus Bay, palm trees in my front yard. I didn't even own a car. I
Mm,
sold my car once I got down there. I bought a motorcycle. I'm just
really?
riding a motorcycle 365 days a year because down there, if it does rain, it's coastal. It's gone just as quick as it blows in.
Mm.
Um, but it'll flood and water will get up over your muffler on your motorcycle. So it's common down in Corpus. You're going to see motorcycles riding on the sidewalk, higher elevations and stuff like that. But mom told me dad was getting real bad that the doctors had only given him 6 months, and this was in August of 2007. And said if you want to spend some time with him, you need to start thinking about coming home. And I told mom, I said I'll be there in 2 weeks,
Okay.
and I was. On the 14th day, I come rolling in. Um, like I said, I didn't have a car, but in 2 weeks, I bought back the car that I drove down there, and I bought a trailer, and I came home with a 1993 Geo Tracker, and I think it was a 6 foot trailer, just barely long enough that I could put a 1988 Harley Davidson Sportster
Oh man.
Hugger first year uh, Hugger first year Evo, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Put that motorcycle on there, two Army duffel bags full of clothes, a microwave, and a 19-inch television.
And we're
Everything I owned
mm-hmm.
was in my car or on that trailer or in my toolbox in my tools
And
from
we're not talking what would pass as a 19-inch flat screen. We're talking those big those
Dude,
sicko television screens.
no,
Would take.
no. I mean, it was a little bit taller than that little flat screen right there, but it was 2 foot thick.
Oh man, God.
That was everything I owned.
Okay.
That is everything that I owned to my name.
Okay.
I didn't have something stuck in storage nowhere. Didn't have anything at mom's house. That was everything that I owned. And came home, no guarantees of a job, nothing. And came back to Madisonville or to Nortonville from Corpus Christi, Texas. And I ran into a buddy. We went out and was karaokeing down there at, what was it, Bartholomew's. Yeah, Bart's
Mm-hmm.
down there. And met a girl, decided we were going to get married, and we did. And I was like, okay, now I need a big paycheck. So right to the coal mines I went, the very place that I tried to avoid. And Dad didn't leave us until June of 2009. So I got some real good time with him. Uh, Remodeled his barns and stuff for him down there. He'd come out and sit in a blue chair, and anybody who come to the house was going to get a tour of that barn
Sure.
after I rebuilt them stalls for him. He was proud of that,
Yeah.
and it was just work, you
Yeah.
know, and it really pulled me away from the business. I was dedicated to work. Um, we would we'd be working uh, 70, 78, 80 hours a week, uh, and making killer money,
Mm-hmm.
just hand over fist. But I paid for it, you know. Um, them shoulders didn't get no better, back didn't get no better, and then everything started drying up, and I was like, well, it's time to find something, a little bit more stable, and so I tried factory maintenance, and it's like everything lined up, everything just lined up perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
I love where I'm at now, and like I said, I tag teamed up a little bit with Rough Rider Roy, one of the Kansas City Rough Riders, and we palled around, had a good time, but nothing really launched, off the ground, and it just seemed to kind of flatline. Um, and I really didn't care. I was burnt. I had been through so much in my life, and I had a good time. He enjoyed coming to the wrestling, seeing Daddy wrestle. He would come out to. I'd drag him out to back when I was training, and he doesn't remember a whole lot of that because he was real young at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and so his exposure has been since he was 2.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether he realized it or not. Because I'd take him out there and he'd run around the ring chasing little RJ. Well, RJ ain't so little no more, but to me he'll always be little RJ, 6 years old, coming off the top rope, in frog splashes. Um, he was the son of one of my trainers,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's he works on barges now.
Mm-hmm.
Got to see him. I think it was the October show of Naw and Nebo, and we all got together with uh, Ray Fambro
Mm-hmm.
and took that big group photo. You got Gator, Rowdy Red, you got myself, RJ Jr., uh, Rough House Rickard. Hope I didn't leave anybody out. And we all got in that group photo because I looked at Gator when we were standing outside during intermission. I was like, if we don't get that group photo, we may not get an opportunity to get that group photo again.
Right.
Because, Gator was the one that trained me. He and the Honky Tonk King Roy Presley, Ray and the Fambros and the Rough Riders, they were all coming out there while we were training.
Nice.
Travis got his start out there. Him and I don't remember uh, Rough House coming out there uh, very much as I remember running into him when I started working for Ermit Matney, his papa and or uncle, and Kenny Cotton.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the close knit brotherhood of independent wrestling in Western Kentucky.
Right.
You're gonna come up with somebody. You're gonna work a lot of shows, different shows with the same familiar wrestlers.
Mhm.
You're gonna develop long term relationship with some of these guys, and I got relationships with a lot of these guys that go back, that span 20, 30 years,
Right.
almost 26 years, and good times. So we jumped all over that and took that big group photo,
Mhm.
um, and I've got it. It's actually my screensaver on my work phone or
Nice.
work computer. Um, so I just kind of fell away from the business after I came home, started working all the time, and it was like 3 years ago, last October, and Nall had a show down in Eddyville, and I went down there
Mhm.
and I watched the show, and it was good that I could do that now. I could go watch a show without wanting to be a part of it,
Okay.
without having that desire to, you know, lace your boots back up, get in the ring, do the dance, and I was comfortable. I was okay with it. Um, Trevor was out of college, and he was doing his own thing, and Caden Oliver hadn't even broke into the business yet himself. I don't think he recognized me. He saw me at the show, and he comes up to me, and he says, "My dad's still wrestling. How come you ain't wrestling?" And I looked Caden right in the eye, and I said, I am perfectly happy in my retirement. I can come to the shows. I can support the guys, without wanting to get involved and hurt myself. My
Mhm.
my son is the only reason why that I would even consider getting back in, getting myself re-involved in the business. It's a rough business,
Mhm.
and especially when you're an old man,
Right.
or would you call me a timeless entity?
There
So, oh yeah, yeah. He's one of my biggest fans. He tells me I do not look or act my age.
you go. Oh no, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh. Well, hell, I would have been your
Well, you were surprised when you found out I was 51.
so yes. So for the listeners, so me and Ben had kind of fell out of touch over the years. We did keep in contact after the Big Biting Pig had ended, and coincidentally, about a month after the Caretakers premiere, I was working at one of the Dollar Generals over in Hanson, and he was working for the mines at the time. He had come through. I think he had just gotten off work, but he was trying to talk me into coming to the mines at one point, and I had almost considered it. But my first wife at the time, she really balked at that idea because uh, about 4 years prior, she had lost a cousin in a mining accident, and she was afraid of that happening and her being left alone with our daughter. So that's pretty much why I recanted on possibly going into the mines and whatnot. But me and Ben, we still kept in contact, here and there, and then I'd bump into him over at the Workout Anytime gym, and this was actually after me and Megan had split up, which he wasn't aware that had happened. So I
Mm-mm.
smartened him up on that and told him what all went down. And then kind of after that, we just kind of fell out of touch, and then until October of last year, I had this was my third show commentating for Naw, and I look in the crowd, I see Ben Johnson, and I'm just really surprised to see him, and he was really surprised to see me. He was wondering what I was doing, so I told him, what all, that I just got involved and whatnot, and I said, why didn't you? why didn't you tell me that, you were a fan of the business or had been in the business? I mean, hell, folks, I'm just finding out today the man did bull riding, and I didn't even realize he had served with two different branches of the military. I'm just finding all this stuff today. And what was your response when I asked you about the wrestling question?
um, I forget.
I'm going to paraphrase here, but I believe it was, well, when we first met, or back then, didn't really know you well enough to share that information with you, or something like that. But in your defense, I don't think you knew that I was a big wrestling fan myself.
Well, that was the sad part about just working with you on the set of the Caretakers is because we were always in character,
Hmm.
and you were always second guessing your scene or how you performed in your scene. It's like, I think I messed that up. I was like, no, dude, you look good. I think it went over, And it was really awesome to hear Steve's commentary about that first night that we shot together with Greg and Luke,
Hmm.
when we did the scene stuffing Luke into the back of the car,
Yes.
landing them shots down on him, and he said, that wasn't even scripted. It wasn't, and I just thought instantly, I guess that military took over real quick, and instantly it was like, man, if I was going to be stuffing somebody in the trunk of a car, I was going to make sure they were going to stay in the car, you know. So
Right.
land a couple of blows. Was there a watermelon back there, or was I punching into my hand?
You might have. There was not a watermelon. I think you were punching it either into your hand or in the air, and then they had added the sound effects
No,
when.
that was not added because I remember now I was punching into my hand, and those shots were landed. That
Okay.
stick that you hear
Yeah.
is the stick that of me landing those rings that I was wearing into that bare palm of mine, and I was putting them in there.
Uh,
I was shooting.
I pretty much had zoned in after we got Luke in the trunk, and then I was basically reaching, without taking my eyes off, the trunk and all that. I reached back in to grab that handgun and whatnot, and
Oh,
then
dude, and
fire.
that was beautiful. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's fire 3 shots right into the gas tank.
Nothing like a little kaboom to go along with with the film shooting. So, but
When he walked back there and hit that flashlight on and off that quick, that it was perfect.
it was.
It is still one of my top 2 favorite scenes in any of the Big Biting Pigs movie.
Hmm.
The other one is when we were well, do I want to talk about that now or wait till we get to?
Buddy, whenever you want to talk about
I
it, we'll
was
talk about it.
working. I did a lot of crew work on the Caretakers too, because that was my
Okay.
first involvement with anything to do with filming. Steve had uh, given me a buzz because
Hmm.
I had mentioned to him when I found out that he was doing movies, and I was like, "Hey, when you guys doing auditions, let me know." And when they started doing auditions, he told me. So I went on over to the Mar and I did my audition, and which was really odd because the scene where Nick and the lady that played the head vampire,
April.
April, when April and Nick are standing on the front porch, and he says they're puppies. That was the line that I had to uh, do my audition with
Okay, I
at the
got you.
Dilemma Mar.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell kind of movie is it? They're puppies. I thought this was a horror flick,
Right.
and of course you got no visualization. All you got is this little bitty short piece of a script to work with when you're doing an audition.
Right.
That tore me up. I ain't no way Steve's doing a horror movie about puppies because I got a big heart for dogs. I'm a
Right.
big dog lover.
Sure.
So not understanding anything about the rest of the script, I'm out here trying to do this audition based off of that scene, and I didn't think that it went well at all, which is probably why they give me a non-speaking role.
So when I auditioned for that film, and I really, honestly, I really wished I would have covered when I auditioned for all those other films with Steve. But again, that there's nothing formal about these episodes. It's just shooting from the hip. But I read for two scenes. One was it was actually our scene that we did with Luke and Craig and
Yeah.
all that. I actually read for Craig's part, and I actually read for Luke's part, or
Oh,
for Luke's part, and I felt like it went really good. And then let's see, No, I take that back. There was 3 parts. Then the other one was I had to I had to simulate I had knives getting thrown at me,
Oh,
coincidentally,
wow.
and then
There's
the
irony right there.
irony right there.
'Cause
Yes,
I think you and I both died of knives in that movie.
I went back, you went forward. Yeah, I remember that. Honestly, I think you did yours way better than mine. I just plopped,
See,
you
there
know.
you go again.
Uh, well, I told Steve, I said, thank God that James and Timothy Blair were there to catch me and stuff and all that because we were on a gravel road.
No, man, no,
Yeah,
we're talking B-rated movie, and it was not in the budget to get us a crash pad
right.
to go down on this gravel road.
Hmm.
Okay, so the albino pops out from behind the fender. Wheesh, wheesh. Here she comes with these 2 blades. One hits me in the chest. The other one hits you in the chest. And here we go. And it was on gravel road. We just
Hmm.
fell on what we had to fall on.
Yeah.
You know,
And what was fun?
no
The
cardboard.
no cart, nothing, nothing. I mean, and
Steve, if you're listening,
Steve, we love you, buddy. But no, the last scene I read for it was the torture scene that Robin, I think it was Robin Miles, I think was his last name, but he did a fantastic job playing somebody that's doing the torture scene and whatnot, and um, you know he just did a fantastic job. Really great guy. Whenever I saw him all clean shaven up top, with the bald head, I was like, no, because I remember him from the year before with
the long
Spirit
hair and the
Stalkers.
beard.
No, he didn't have a beard. He did have a he did have a goatee when I met him because it was when we were filming that scene for Spirit Stalkers. We're all out in the street in in our boxers and nightgowns and all this other stuff and all that. And I'm wearing socks because like I said on the last episode, I'm not a barefoot person, but unless if I'm taking a shower, and that's about it. But
What
um,
time of the year did they film that?
it was it was either July or August of 2012.
So it was comfortable out there filming at night.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Now, when we filmed our scenes for Caretakers, which the one at nighttime weather
Uh
was
huh.
perfect. Now, I want to say so that was on a Sunday night. Now, the day before we had filmed our death scene,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and weather wasn't too bad, but if you remember, a fella had pulled up in his pickup truck or something and started talking to Steve and PJ and Felicia.
Yeah,
So,
we're out
yeah,
here shooting.
yeah,
We're out here trying to shoot this scene, and here comes Farmer Joe,
yep.
just cruising up in his pickup truck, and just rolls his window down and just starts. Well, what are you guys? Are you guys stuck? You guys broke down?
There was that, and then the next thing he did was he said, "Well, just make sure y'all don't step out onto this property because I guess he was the landowner, for the land that was right next to that gravel road or whatnot." But we all, they gave him assurances we weren't going to step, one toe on his property. So,
Well, we didn't. We landed into gravel.
and then let me think. We had a scene that we shot in Princeton where we're carrying bodies.
Into that beautiful
That
house.
was a beautiful house.
Oh, you want to? Yes, you want to
Hmm.
talk about historical, beautiful, probably built what 15, 14, maybe 1600s.
Probably.
Oh, and the detail in this house is absolutely gorgeous, and it's just big, and it's just like limitless on rooms, and the size of the rooms on the inside is just massive.
Well, and what's funny is that day I'd actually pulled my back. Um, let's
I
see.
remember that.
Yeah,
I remember you saying
I
that.
had to wear a compression brace underneath my t-shirt and
Mm-hmm.
stuff and all that, and thankfully it wasn't visible while whenever the final product came out.
It's okay. It would just look like a corset or.
Or something to hold my dad bod gut in, which dad bods weren't really a term back then. But yeah, I'd pulled my back doing some furniture, and Craig, God bless him, he was in a lot of pain and agony. He was hell,
He'd slipped a disc.
yeah.
Yeah, and he had oh he could barely even sit up. There was a lot of times when we get done shooting a scene or a cut, and he would just fall out. Just he was done. He I doubt he ever got it, but if there was an award for this dude's got the most heart while shooting a movie he ain't getting paid for,
Yeah,
he worked it. He did good.
he did.
He fought through all that.
I think at one point the day that we shot in Princeton, hell, I think the one of the homeowners let him lay on her couch or something for a little bit,
She
just kind
did,
of
and we had some long shooting days in Princeton and some long shooting nights.
yeah.
We did because that's where the majority of the scenes, around
Hmm.
April's character, um, were shot at,
Yeah.
and I mean that because that's the hub.
That might have been where I actually met you, because there was one day that I came on set. Y'all were working in the attic, and y'all were
The
gonna fix it.
basement.
Yeah, y'all were gonna fix it in post, and it was gonna be the basement, quote unquote.
No,
And there
no,
was.
I actually didn't do anything
Were
with the.
you not there?
Mm-mm,
Oh, okay.
no,
So then that would
no.
have been that could have been where we first met. You just happened to
I'm
not be there for
thinking
that
we
one.
crossed paths maybe at the premiere date of the
Probably.
premiere,
Yeah.
probably. That
Yeah.
maybe I'm not really sure.
Definitely. But
Now, um, yeah, I still drive by that house in Princeton, since I'm, driving to Eddyville and stuff. And I mean, it's still intact, still looks as good as it
oh, it's
did,
gorgeous, beautiful
12 years
house.
ago. Um, April freaking scared the hell out of me as that dang vampire and stuff. I mean, she played that to a T. And,
Well, she's got those eyes
yeah,
in real life.
yeah, yeah. And it's like I told Steve, sad to say, I haven't really had much contact with a lot of them folks since, it lives in the attic, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. The premiere.
I knew this was coming.
Yeah, yeah. So, folks, you're gonna get to rehash this again. So, anyways, as Steve had mentioned in the previous episode, after the film had been viewed, all the castmates would go sit at the tables that were, and it had like their names or like what their characters were, etc. And so it was me, Ben. Let's see, Ben was on one side of me. I was in the center, and then Luke Short was on the other side of me. I don't remember seeing Craig. I don't think he made it to the premiere that night, but I do have a profile picture of the pic that the three of us took and all that. And one of the one of the patrons walks by our desk, looks right at Ben, and says, "Well, you were definitely the muscle of the group, weren't you?" And oh, Ben looks at me, and then I look at him, I look at Luke, and I'm thinking, "You bitch, who the hell do you think you are?" And I mean, they gave me all nine kinds of hell over that and stuff. And I mean, they just had a field day with me. And uh, yeah, needless to say, I didn't really live that down. Part of it was myself because I just wouldn't shut up about it. So the more I talked about it, the more they ribbed me on it. So Ben was like, "Well, Andrew, if you just start doing some more tricep dips and all that, because maybe your arms will get a little bigger." And I was like, "Ben, I'm like, I do compound powerlifting movements. I don't do, just triceps and
Well, see,
biceps."
that's where you get the rip. That's where you got to isolate the muscles.
You said that too, actually. Oh my gosh. Uh, God.
Oh
Oh
man.
Lord. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely had a blast with that. Oh man. Had a good turnout that night too. Um, Now you were in Francis Stein, but we didn't work together. If my memory serves me right, didn't you play the father of like
I
the
did.
of the main character
Sure
and
did.
as like a memory or something?
Yeah, I was a memory.
Like me. Let's see. You played the father. I played a college professor that got involved in a scandal with this character. So and now,
Ouch.
yeah, yeah. There was like a brief moment you could see me on like one of them screens when they were monitoring the girl that was played by Jessica Leonard. It was like a brief moment, and the fans don't know this, but before I recorded with Steve, um, when I had him on the phone, I said, "Steve, I said I'm not recording this." I said, but I never did really apologize for being immature and unprofessional. Because basically, when I saw that I had like a split-second appearance on the film, I was pissed. I walked off and went and sat in my vehicle and stuff while all that went on. But yeah, I was pretty petty and immature back then. So, but I told him that I was really sorry for my unprofessionalism. I said, looking back, it was like, yeah, I really shouldn't have done that. I
Yeah,
guess I've gotten a little wiser in my years. But
I
anyways,
hear it. I hear it. It's coming.
oh, go ahead, man.
The wiseness in the years. I keep waiting for it.
Now, And honestly, yeah, that. How long did your scene take when you were filming?
On
I'm
Francis Stein.
Francis Stein, yes, sir.
Um, Maybe we might have shot that in a half hour.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because you were on the, I guess the extended scenes or whatever. I mean, did your scene make it to the film by chance?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I remember watching it. I was
That's
like,
one. That's one of the. Shh, Steve, plug your ears. That's one of the Francis Stein movies that I haven't actually watched all the way through,
really?
and I don't know why.
Hmm.
I do have a pretty vast horror collection, and
And folks, I have seen it. It's he
oh,
handed.
you just saw that little sliver of my zombie genre.
Okay, folks, he gave me well, these younger kids won't know what I'm talking about, but the older folks, you know, those holders that you put your CDs, DVDs in and stuff that zips. Right before we started recording, Ben handed me a collection. I didn't realize that was just a sliver, but there was, what'd you say, 400 discs in there?
Almost 500, just
Almost
short of it,
500.
463, I think.
Damn.
Zombie genre related movies. I'm a huge fan of the zombie genre,
Mm-hmm.
but I like Steve. You know, we grew up during the El Primo time of horror movies. You know,
Right.
with Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees. You know that was a little bit. Those characters came on a little later.
Okay.
You know, we get to back it up to the real good stuff like Piranha, um, Creature from the Black Lagoon, even though it was still black and white when I was watching it, because we had living in Chicago, we had this thing this show that would come on cable television every night called The Son of Svengoolie,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't realize that he was even alive and people were even still watching him because we're talking about my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
way
Right.
back when Moses walked across the river. So he was like the male version of Elvira, and he would host these late night horror runs on. I think it had to be either Friday night because there's no way that my parents would have let me stay up late to watch anything on a school night. So, um, you know, uh, the movie. And that's not a work. It's called SSSSSS,
Okay.
where the lab scientist is out there in the desert and he's doing testing on reptiles and snakes, and this woman and this man come out there either to assist or they get stranded or something like that, and he actually does a physical experiment on the man and turns him into this big king cobra snake. It's horrifying to a 6-year-old.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
you know, but the old movies, Bela Lugosi, Dracula,
Mm-hmm.
Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, The Wolfman. We had kick ass, movie names back in for our horror movies.
Right.
Now you got, you know, 7,000 Leagues of Hell, House of Corpses, you know, The Werewolf,
Right.
The Vampire,
Mm-hmm.
The Mummy. Yeah, The Mummy was a big one. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it was just amazing, growing up watching that, as a kid. And my dad, I guess, had a huge influence on the movies that I watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because Dad was big into the horror stuff. Dad was who introduced me to wrestling. There's a story.
Okay. Go right ahead, man.
So, Dad lived in Chicago after we moved to Madisonville.
Okay.
He was locked in with his profit sharing, his what's that other thing? His retirement, all of his stuff, and couldn't transfer any closer than Marion, Illinois. Mom was fed up with the crime and having
Sure.
to push me around the block with a 38 special tucked underneath my pillow because the crime rate had gone up considerably, and she was just sick of it. She's a
Mm.
country girl. Both of them were. Dad's from Muhlenberg County, mom's from Christian County. She grew up in a little spit called Wildcat Holler. Well, if you don't know, it's kind of between Apex and Lacey. in the
Uh,
Christian County area.
I know where Lacey's at. I've never heard of Apex. Now, hell, I
Well,
lived there
Apex
for
is
13
where
years.
Rock Bridge is.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Um, and if anybody wants the 401 on that location, just let Andrew know, and I'll share the information with him. Okay. Leave a comment in the comment section. How many different platforms do you broadcast on?
5 now. Um,
Because I listen to you on Spotify.
yes, sir. So Spotify is the main one that I put these episodes on, but the RSS link, I've also shared it with Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and now YouTube. So,
And now, right on. There you
yes,
go.
sir.
Now YouTube. Glad they're letting somebody on there. They kick everybody I want to listen to off. So,
Who knows? They may wind up kicking me off at some point. So,
so Dad had a major influence on me because he couldn't be in Kentucky because of his job.
mhm.
But it wasn't like I didn't get to see him.
Sure.
On most occasions, he'd come in once a month. It was very rare, and usually in the wintertime, where that he might go 2 months.
Hmm.
But right there in the dead of winter, you got Christmas, my birthday, so he may not come home February or March, but guaranteed he's home by
Hmm.
Easter. So as I got older, I would go spend my summers with Dad. So I'm old enough that I can, you know, be left at home because Dad still got to work.
Sure.
So I'm spending my summers in Chicago. Came back to Madisonville with some of the most awesome uh, back to school fashions that you couldn't get down here
Hmm.
because, oh my God, did I stick out like a sore thumb?
Really.
Oh, it was horrible. Because what was cool up there, what I was exposed to in Chicago during the summer, was not exactly on, you know, the hit list of fashion for Madisonville, Kentucky, circa 1986, 87.
Okay.
Okay, just shred up your old Levi jeans, cut the sleeves out of your Poison T-shirt, and rock on.
There you go.
So I wake up one Saturday morning. Dad's not working.
Hmm.
I'm in Chicago, and we're flipping through the channels. And then all of a sudden, I hear this. You know the tune. You know the ditty.
Uh,
World class championship
right.
wrestling
Yeah.
in NWA,
Hmm.
right? Is coming on TV. I've never seen this before in my life. These dudes are beating the dog snot out of each other. That they got a couple of guys with black shoulder pads and spikes coming out of them, face paint. This one blonde-headed pretty boy with muscles like a Hercules, picking people up, beating them around. Sting,
Hmm.
back when he had the bleached hair with the face paint, and this flamboyant guy with a sparkly coat, long white hair, and they're on the TV.
Right.
This is the craziest thing I've ever seen, but they're beating the crap out of each other, and I love
Hmm.
it. Okay? And when it goes off, and me and my dad are sitting there watching that, he sees me getting excited over this. I'm bouncing all over the room. I'm dropping elbows on nightstands, leg drops on top of the lamppost. And at the very end of the segment says, okay, you guys can see us live tonight at the UIC Pavilion in Chicago, Illinois. That's the University of Illinois in Chicago,
Right.
right?
Right.
So Dad says, get up. I'm like, okay. He's like, get dressed. Okay. My father was a man of few words.
Sure.
Okay. I get dressed. We drop into the 1986 Ford Escort. I was going to drop it. Here we go. Pull up to the Ticketmaster because you couldn't buy tickets online. Online didn't exist.
Exactly.
You had if you wanted to see an event, you had to get off your keister. You had to drive down to that Ticketmaster box, purchase a ticket, and I can still see the ticket to this day on the floor. $16.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Well, $32 was decent. A lot of money back then.
Right.
So here we go. We get there, we get in our seats. Everybody that I had just seen on the television this morning is 20 feet away from me now.
Oh man.
And that was it. I was bit.
Yeah.
I was bit. The Road Warriors drove a spike into Dusty Rhodes' eyebrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Tully Blanchard was out there. The Four Horsemen, Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, the Freebirds, uh, the Midnight Express, Jim Cornette. Everybody was there because it was a Great American Bash.
No.
Great American
frickin'
Bash tickets
way.
on the floor, $16 a piece.
Oh hell, man.
Right?
Damn.
What a first show. What a first show.
Right.
Damn.
So I'm bit. Nothing is the same in my life. Now, we couldn't get that channel down here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to mess you up here in a minute, too, because anybody who's listening to this under the age of 40, you're not going to relate. I'm sorry, but I'm going to expose some pain. They said doing stuff like this was therapeutic, so I'm going to let some stuff out.
Hell, go for it.
So we come back down to Madisonville, Kentucky, and at the time, the only cable carrier that you could get didn't carry the pay-per-views. Okay? So now I'm left with Mid-South Wrestling, watching Jerry Lawler throw fire in the face of Bill Dundee and all this stuff. Well, hey, 2 months ago, I didn't even care nothing about these people. Didn't even know they were on there. They were interfering with my Looney Tunes.
Right.
So I didn't mess with that. The change was that quick. Remember, Steve mentioned in the podcast, I hit that spot where I quit watching wrestling and I started, I was more interested in girls.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it happened in a summer, that quick.
Wow.
And pretty much within weekends of each other. I didn't care nothing about my cartoons. I didn't care nothing about my Captain Crunch. I wanted wrestling on. And now I'm enjoying going over to my dad's brother's house because he used to sit there and watch it all the time. My uncle Edgar, my dad's oldest brother, over in Central City, and so now I'm sitting down because my Aunt Louise, his wife, she loved to watch it too, and you could not convince either one of them that there was anything fake about any of that.
Mm-hmm.
They wasn't having it. True old school hardcore fans,
Right.
And those were really good times. And all of a sudden, what do you know? There's a wrestling show coming to Browning Springs. Well, who's on the card? Paul Diamond, Pat Tanaka, Bad Company, Jojo
Really?
Yamamoto, Jeff Jarrett, Billy Joe Travis, Bill Dundee. I mean, and that was where the first time I saw Dutch Mantel wrestle live.
Really?
Yeah.
Not to cut you off. He
Yeah,
mentioned.
you did.
He mentioned. Well, if y'all hear that I'm in a neck brace, you'll know what happened. But anyways, he mentioned Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka, Bad Company. They were also very popular in AWA. They were actually AWA Tag Team Champions, but they also wrestled for Vince McMahon's WWF as the Orient Express, and Paul Diamond actually wrestled as Kato under the mask. So
Sure did. I like that play.
and since we're talking about characters, Paul Diamond, he was actually the second man to play the Max Moon character in WWF. The first one that some of you listeners may not know, that was actually Conan from the WCW. So, anyways, bang.
Just
Sorry,
throw it on the
folks.
floor.
That's venturing into more of my area of what I started to get introduced on.
Sorry, folks. Didn't mean to drop my phone there. So, but anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off there, boss. But go ahead.
Yeah, you did. But that's okay. That was a good place to cut off. And you got great color in on that. Because, how many of these kids today never heard of a Pat Tanaka or a Paul Diamond or a Billy Joe Travis? Tracy Smothers was down there,
Right.
And so these are my early influences on the business. And but that summer that I came back from Chicago, I mean, it was just it. So my dad, knowing that I enjoy watching wrestling so much, and now my mom is having to take me whenever they're having local events down here,
Right.
and which got my mom into watching wrestling. She's one of the biggest indie fans that you'll see out there. She's absolutely nuts. And I hope that she's coming at 84 years old. She ain't no spring chicken no more, but she still loves her wrestling. And
Right.
since Yehu over here has decided he's going to get involved in the business, which we'll get back to that story about Eddyville here in just a second. There's no way she's going to miss it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Not a chance
she's awesome, and
Mm-hmm.
she has followed me as far as she could at the time. She's come to Gallatin, Tennessee when I was wrestling in Gallatin. You couldn't keep her out of the National Guard Armory in Madisonville. Um,
in the world. You would know that she was there too. Anytime she was there, you would know.
one night, I had to tell her, I said, "Mom, I'm not a good guy tonight because I had made my heel turn."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "You can't cheer for me." She's like, "Why not?" I said, "Because I'm a bad guy. You got to boo me." "Oh, okay. Oh, good. All right. So we're square." Music hits. I come out. The entire stadium. Boo. Here's Mom. Yay! I said, I was like, "Oh, God, she's going to kill my heat, right?" I was like, "Shut up and sit down, fat girl." And immediately, I saw my life flash in front of my eyes. But immediately she realized, "Oh, crap. Kayfabe."
Right.
And she started flipping me the middle finger and laying into me. But she's great. She's awesome, and she's excited. We had to kind of keep this under wraps because she's always been protective of the grandson. So
Sure.
we actually had to keep this on the low during the early part of his training. And finally, situation arose that had to be handled that we just had to blurt it out.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so we're in Eddyville. But Dad, hold on to the Eddyville story. So Dad is able to get the pay-per-views in Chicago that we couldn't get in Madisonville.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't get or couldn't afford. They
Yeah.
were $50 a pay-per-view
Yeah.
on most of them, and my mom couldn't afford that,
Mm-hmm.
so we didn't get them. So my dad would record them with a VHS tape on a VCR, and I just lost 50% of your listeners right there. Google it. He would record all these pay-per-views and then would bring it home to me. So I'd get them a month later,
Yeah.
and I'm watching this stuff. I already watched what had happened. I've seen highlights
Mm-hmm.
on the weekend show, but I haven't actually seen the whole matches.
Mm-hmm.
And when my friends at school that were into watching wrestling found out that I had video cassettes, tapings of the pay-per-views, everybody was coming to my house. So everybody would come. We'd all watch pay-per-views a month out,
Mm-hmm.
2 months out, and I've still got a lot of those old original pay-per-view tapes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
I ended up actually. That's kind of some of the first media that I watched of wrestling was those old tapes.
Really?
Because somehow or another, years down the road, I was, it was whenever you were on the road working various places. I would where I would usually, get my visitations with Dad. I was going to be with my grandparents,
Sure.
and there would just be trash bags full of VHS tapes,
Oh,
Drawers.
wow.
drawers full
Full.
of WCW, Starcades,
Mm.
Great American Bashes, like any big event that you could think of from that time period. That was what I was watching because I didn't have a way to watch it on
Sure.
cable. They didn't get the channels.
Right.
So, instead, having grown up with it, I still had that passion about it,
Mm-hmm.
and I still wanted to watch it and be part of it, or at least have that, part of my life. So I would find as many of them as I could watch,
Mm-hmm.
and within a couple of years, I had watched every single one of them.
Mm.
So they were having to go to their friends. My mom and papa had some friends that had some old tapes of
Mm-hmm.
other shows that I hadn't seen. So they were, buying them from them, and I'd get another trash bag full of
Sure.
VHS tapes. And
Sure.
I'd watch
Sure.
through them, have them completed in a month, and that's very much where I kind of got my inspiration for and love for the more mainstream part of wrestling because I had only been introduced to the indie circuit
Sure.
whenever I was really young.
Yeah.
So seeing
Yeah.
this was kind of my first stepping my toe into the water of professional wrestling as far as watching was concerned. I grew up on the old stuff.
Right.
And
Go ahead.
Oh, so getting back to the Eddyville, So I'm in Eddyville. Caden comes up to me. My old man's still wrestling. Why aren't you still wrestling? Told him I'm enjoying my retirement. Trevor's graduated from college, and as far as I know, Trevor doesn't even watch wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
After college, we lost a lot of relationship and distance.
Okay.
Just kind of kind of took over. And oh man, it's the happiest day of my life when he told me that he was moving back home. I don't stay up his business all the time with us only living 500 feet away from each other.
Sure.
I walked down last night, and that was the first time since we live in the country, y'all. Somebody comes walking up, you don't hear no doors, you don't hear no engine, you don't see no lights, and all of a sudden somebody starts knocking at your door. Yeah, you start freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
Sorry. Excuse my language. Sorry.
so Caden, I looked at Caden and I told him, I was like, the only thing that would bring me out of retirement, the only reason why I would ever step inside the squared circle again is if my son asked me to train him. He ain't making that phone call. He's not interested in it. I think my retirement's pretty safe. And for the first time, I meant that.
Yeah.
And I could feel that. And I was good with that. Well, almost 3 years to the date. Almost 3 years, within 3 or 4 days, exactly.
Right.
I get a text message.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Dad, do you still have your old wrestling gear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I figured he was, maybe found a vintage buyer or something online, that was into antiques.
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah. Bing. Will you train me?
Oh wow. Right.
Absolutely. And I sent it back. It is exactly how that conversation went.
Nice.
As soon as I sent that text message, I pick up the phone and I call Paul. I'm like, I need a favor. He's like, what? I said, I need you to put me in touch with somebody that has a ring.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, really? And I said, yeah. So he said, well, there's Derek and Josh. And I was like, okay. Well, I know Josh, I know Josh a little better than I knew Derek
Mm-hmm.
at the time. It's just the way it was,
Right.
So I sent Derek the text message, and I called Josh,
Okay.
or vice versa. I don't know. I've slept since then.
No.
Um, and anyway, of course, there was a lot of adrenaline pumping during that too because I'm just got excited as hell because my son wants to get into the business.
Right.
And so I called him up. We had that conversation. I was like, I need to call in that favor. I can never repay,
Mm-hmm.
and but I'll do anything that I can do, to earn it.
Sure.
And he was like, no problem, dude. We're having a show the following Saturday, the October show.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, come on down. Tell him to come on out. And that's what kicked it off.
Yeah.
So he starts training, and I could tell immediately that the years of the exposure of being exposed to the business of being around, me being in the business for his childhood had an impression.
Sure.
And just the exposure of watching wrestling, not just on a regular basis, but he's got he had the liberty to go back and watch all the old VHS tapes. He could, and he could enhance his exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So he was watching it. I'm dragging him up and down the road to shows with me, anywhere that I went. We worked Coliseum Championship Wrestling up there in Evansville. Me and Isaiah Thomas absolutely tore that house down
Yeah.
in their annual Halloween show, Stairway to Hell, in a barbed wire ladder match. and I still bear the scar from that barbed wire ladder match. It ripped up a beautiful Harley Davidson tattoo on my right bicep there. You see
Yeah, I
that?
see that. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
As I flex from isolating those muscles. You told me shoot from the hip, man. So, what the hell was I even talking about? Oh, Coliseum Championship Wrestling.
Right.
So, we absolutely tore that freaking house down, but we didn't use the ladder that much. And that's Evansville. That's the Coliseum. I mean, they have grown. That Coliseum's got more blood in it than the one in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's just the way it was because you had guys like Corporal Robinson and Necro Butcher working that. Big props out to Necro Butcher for working. I mean, for what he's done to the business. He had a big influence on me. Of course, you know, that wasn't my style of wrestling to go hardcore, you know, because everything that you saw in the movie The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke, and that's Necro Butcher in
Right.
that ring with him,
Right.
with when they're bumping on them thumbtacks and those light bulbs and the trash cans and the scissors and the staple gun, that's Necro Butcher.
Right.
I mean, that was a shoot. That's just him.
Right.
That's, you know, if you've seen one Necro Butcher match, by God, you've seen the rest of them because it is hardcore. And but that's the Coliseum. Man, we
Right.
used to stuff. Me and Isaiah were cruiserweights. You know, we didn't do that stuff. And
Right.
he looks at me and he says, "Bro, I don't do hardcore." I was like, "I don't either. I'm in a PJ hood, amigo." You know, I was like, "I'm not ripping this thing up." And he's like, "What are we gonna do?" I said, "We're gonna go out there and we're gonna work our asses off.
Right.
We'll use the ladder. It's a gimmick, dude. We'll use it as a prop. Doesn't mean we have to eat it."
Right.
And he's like, "Okay, okay." This is another one of those stories that's got a stitch down the road.
Gotcha.
So we go out there. You want? Here's the shoot. Isaiah had messed up his rotator cuff, and he was having surgery, and he was their cruiserweight champ, and so he needed to take some time off, and he needed to be out of the picture, so he could get his surgery, and so he could heal.
Sure.
The part that I didn't know is that even with the strap, I was having a very difficult time getting over with that crowd down there. We're talking Evansville. We're talking Coliseum.
Sure.
We're talking early 2000s. Okay. And they're just hardcore. I wasn't a hardcore wrestler. Okay. I was very highly dedicated to his craft, you know, and that's just not what he does. And he's amazing. You've seen him on the uh, the wrestlers miniseries that they did or for OVW. He's got a role in this new movie that's coming out about the woman wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Queen of the Ring.
Queen of the Ring.
Yeah, I just heard about Queen of the Ring.
Yes.
Okay.
This is hi. He's my hood ninja. So, and to all the rest of you hood ninjas out there listening, what's up? And I was having a real hard time getting over in Evansville. I didn't know this at the time.
Sure.
I just knew Hi and I were about to have a match, and neither one of us knew how to work, but we were going to go out there and we were going to work it, and then sell his shoulder at the end of it. So we get out there, we're killing each other, we're destroying each other, and there's another ring set up adjacent to the one we're working in that's got the steel cage wrapped around it because it's all part of the Stairway to Hell, their annual show. And I'm like, hi, you're going over the top rope into that ring, into the cage behind you, and we're going to sell that shoulder on this spot.
Mm.
Okay. He said, I trust you. Here we go. Love you. Big, beautiful spot. Sent him over the top rope, shoulder first into that cage over there. Not only did he hit the cage, but when he came down in between the two rings, he lands on that same shoulder.
Mm.
He landed on it in such a way that he didn't damage it any more than it was already messed up.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel good when he landed on it, but he sold it beautifully. We took it home. I carried the strap for CCW from his point on. He goes out. But because of my commitment to the military And all this was going on at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to leave to go to Afghanistan. I had to turn around and vacate the title, and that would be the last time that I see
Really?
High. Until about three, 4 years ago. So I call up Roughhouse Rickard and I said, Roughhouse, when's the last time we had a road trip? He's like, oh, I don't like road trips with you. Well, if anybody knows me, knows I love a good rip and I love road trips. Back when he was a kid and I'm driving back from North Carolina on a regular weekend, I hit that highway at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 12 hours later, I come pulling into the driveway, and I knew as long as I could, and that was Saturday morning,
Mm-hmm.
as long as I could leave and head back to North Carolina by 6 p.m. Sunday night, I wouldn't be late for muster at 6 o'clock on a Monday morning.
Okay.
It was a highly uh, mini thin Dr Pepper Snickers fueled life back then. I'd come rip it in just enough time to shit shower and shave, get into uniform, and my freaking hair was tingling from the many thins I'd ate on that trip. And but I'd come in on a regular weekend just to see my kiddo, and then have to turn around and go right back,
Sure.
back to back. And no wonder I look so good at this age. You know, I've lived it, man. Uh-oh, you want to go handle that? So I call Paul up. We go on this road trip. Paul informs me on our way to Louisville that High's running his own promotion outside of Louisville, outside of Jeffersonville, Indiana. And I was like, I want to go. I want to go see him. So we took off and we went. And he didn't recognize me.
Really?
Well, the reason why he didn't recognize me is because I was not in gimmick.
Gotcha.
I wore a hood during
Mhm.
that era, and he didn't recognize me. But when I pulled him up close to me and I mentioned my wrestling character's name back from that era,
Mm-hmm.
he he said, "Are you kidding me?" He pulls me over the guardrail, drags me back to the dressing room. He's loving on me. He's hugging on me. Takes me back into his locker room. Introduces me to all his guys, and he's like, "This is the guy I've been telling you about." And
Right.
I'm like, "What have you been telling people about me?" And he's like, "This is the dude that got me over in Evansville." And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, "I was never over in Evansville. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, I was never over in
Mm-hmm.
Evansville until we had our barbed wire match at that Halloween show." He said, "When I come back from my surgery, when I came back, them people loved me." I was
Wow.
like, "Hell yeah, bro. That's what you tear it down."
Yeah.
You know, that had been over a decade.
Yeah.
Neither one of us had seen each other, no contact whatsoever,
Okay.
and that was one of the most amazing moments. And we aren't as distant as we was back then. We
Sure.
still chatted each other every once in a while. And I'm so proud of him. He's done so much, and he's for what he's done, the influence that he's had in his community and on other wrestlers in his business. And
Sure.
he's a great, great guy.
Smarten me up on this, boss. But now rotator cuffs, torn ones when the surgery happens. How long is one generally out for?
Well, I was out for 14 weeks when they had to go in and, excuse me, I was out for 16 weeks when I had to go in and get the scar tissue from the bull riding days had
Mm-hmm.
built up in this shoulder. And so they went in orthoscopically and cleaned all that stuff out. And I was out for 16 weeks. Now, this was a full, uh, this was a full tear, full separation. And there's a bolt and some clothesline in there.
Really?
I reckon it's holding that one together. But I was in better shape. I was more active, and I already knew the physical therapy that I was about to endure because I'd already gone through it with my left shoulder, and so I doubled up on my physical therapy. I was doing it with my therapist, and I was doing it at home, and I was back to work in 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how long I was out because I deployed before he came back,
Okay.
and so I guess I mean everything happened so fast right there
Hmm.
in that time frame.
So it could be t- as
Oh
quick as easy as 2 months, could be as long as 4 to 6 months or something like
yeah,
that.
I think by the book bare minimum they don't expect anything under 16 weeks.
Okay, I got you. Um,
Are you asking for
hmm.
personal reasons?
Oh, I was just curious.
Oh
I've met, so back when I lived in Hopkinsville, and I lived there for about, let's see, I lived there from '97 to 2010, and so I started working out back in the summer of '03, and one night I was doing lat pulls, and there was a fella, which this was in their old setup. This is before they had added a second room. They had the leg extension machine. There was a older fella, we'll say, let's see, I'm 17, 18 at the time. This guy's probably in his maybe early 40s, give or take. But he had mentioned that he had torn his rotator cuff, and he had just recently had surgery. He said he could barely pick, a few pounds up, and he
yeah.
said it was a very long, tenuous. He was told it was kind of a long, tenuous process. So I was just curious.
While I was doubling up on my physical therapy, I would lay in my kitchen floor with nothing but a broomstick in between both hands,
Hmm.
flat of my back, and just trying to bench press, just trying to straighten the shoulders.
Sure.
Really, I wasn't working it at all, but I was basically using my other arm to support the weight of the operated on shoulder with tears running down both sides of my face.
So I don't. I've had issues with my left shoulder since before me and you ever crossed paths. Back when I was in college, which I was actually going to ask you on that in just a second, but I, I graduated from Austin P State University. Well, me and some buddies of mine that were wrestling fans, we started our own little dorm room uh, thing called Meacham Championship Wrestling. Like our dorm room looked like a small 2 bedroom apartment. So we had a little hallway and stuff that we would walk out, make our entrances to and stuff. I actually wrote the cues for like when to play the music, introduce this person. I wrote all this. I mean, I wrote all this crap down.
Oh, so you were
And,
ring announcing before you were ring announcing.
well, actually, I didn't ring announce. I just wrote the directions for the ring announcer, and then they'd already had the finishes planned and stuff and all that. So I'd write down, I'd cue, I'd say cue such and such's music. Here's your winner, and if there was a belt on the line, and new, Meacham.
Where are these VHS tapes?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. We had a guy that recorded them. I do not know what happened to them, and
If you're out there listening, guy that recorded them, start uploading those onto YouTube
so
right now.
so one of my old buddies reached out to me after I went public on the post that I was going to start Grizzly's Cave. He had asked like for like where was I on and stuff, and he had said something about coming on, which he lives all the way down in Morristown, Tennessee, and I we haven't really scheduled a time and stuff, but I could ask him if he's able to get his hands on those old tapes. Now, my very last semester, which would have been the spring of '09, we had a blast. I mean, we had we had like our own form of war games. We had last man standing matches. We had a quote unquote it was a money in the bank match, but it was to get the
Did any of your dorm mates or people in the dorms actually come down to watch you guys?
some people would come and watch. Some, not a whole lot. It would just be
Did
some.
you guys ever get the chant? We want mini fridges.
No, we never brought the mini fridge, but we brought in miniature ironing boards, cookie trays, few other things. The biggest thing that really took the damage was the walls were like very very paper thin. So
Oh no.
if anybody hit their hand against that wall, there was going to be a hole, and there had to be. I mean, I couldn't tell you how much drywall repair had to get done to these walls. What was really funny is so uh, let's see. I think it was 10 o'clock at 9 or 10 o'clock at night was the quote unquote curfew. Not that you had to go to bed, but you couldn't be hooting and hollering and all that other stuff because we had some complaints. Okay, so we
I'm sure a few.
so yeah, and then we had to deal with the RAs and all that. Most of them were cool, but we had this one bitch that was, she was just a bitch. I'll leave it at that. I'd like to say something else, but anyways, I already say that these episodes have explicit content, so we had to cut it like 5 minutes before the curfew, so that way we wouldn't get any heat for it. And so, yeah, but anyways, yeah, the spring '09 semester was my last semester of college, and we had tried to do a few more MCW, which stood for Meacham Championship Wrestling. Meacham Apartments was actually one of the dorms I had lived at.
Ah,
I only lived on campus for about 3 semesters because I was still living in Hopkinsville. So, yeah, that's part of the reason I'm still paying on student loans to this day. Thank God I got a couple more years, and God willing, they'll
what do
be
you
paid
mean
off.
Joe didn't hook you up?
Do what?
Joe didn't hook you up?
No,
Oh,
no.
I'm sorry, bro.
But Trevor, now where did you graduate from?
I graduated from Murray State back in 2019. Got my bachelor's degree in history as a super senior.
Hmm.
Was going to double major in education and history,
Okay.
but that was going to take me 6 or 7 years to get done with the lollygagging I did in my second year. Um, but yeah, Murray State 2019.
Um,
Go Racers.
Oh yeah, loose shoes up.
so folks, for those of you that don't know, Austin P and Murray State have had a long rivalry.
Huge.
And do you even know what the rivalry is over, or have you ever heard anything?
I mean, I'd only heard whispers. I didn't really frequent a lot of the sports events. Most of the time, whenever I was going, it was to various different musical uh, things. So, like, I would go watch bands and things, and I'd watch the band, and I would watch enough of the football game to be able to watch the band because I had a couple friends in band that were, performing and stuff like that.
I got you.
I wasn't really that part of it.
Okay. Um, I had went to one Murray State Austin P basketball game. This would have been January of '07. It's actually the first semester I lived on campus because
Mm.
I'd commuted the previously, and man, it was like a dang war zone.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah,
was a war zone, and I mean Austin P went over in the game, but yeah, I mean there was a couple different times. I mean you really thought it was about to really throw down at one point. Thank God we had the home field advantage, but
No, I definitely heard about it. Whenever there was an Austin P versus Murray State game of any sort,
yeah.
everybody was always pretty hyped for it. I may not have gone to the games, but I definitely saw the aftermath. So it would be, all hours of the night, people going out to, if you're from the Murray area, went to Murray. Party Town was absolutely crazy on nights that there was an Austin P Murray game or of any kind.
Mhm.
So yeah, shout out to Party City in Murray.
Yeah, me and my buddies that I mentioned. Me and I want to say one or two others. We painted our faces up, and I painted, which I always had face paint on me because I'd paint my faces up for our
Hmm.
little matches and
Yeah.
stuff. Learned pretty quick you don't want to paint this close to your eyes and all that because if sweat gets in your eyes and stuff, your vision's all blurry and
Oh yeah.
stuff.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'd actually I'd painted my face up kind of in a design similar to almost similar to what Demolition Axe or Bill Eadie would
Yeah.
do and stuff because I always liked his designs. I thought he had really cool designs when he was part of Demolition back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so all these VHS tapes that you had, so kind of similar for me. Now my stepdad he's a self-employed painter, roofer, carpenter, handyman basically.
Yeah.
One of his clients, I'll never forget the name, Dot Sapak,
Hmm.
and this would have been around spring of '98, and he had said that he brought a VHS for me that Miss Dot had recorded a pay-per-view,
Yeah.
and of course I mainly watched WWF. I did catch WCW, especially during the Monday Night Wars,
Oh yeah.
and my first thought was, okay, she recorded WrestleMania. That's cool. No, wasn't WrestleMania. It was WCW's Uncensored, which
Oh
was still a
yeah,
great pay per view
yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
So for a few months, I saw the '98 Uncensored, had the '98 Spring Stampede, and then the '98 Starcade.
Yeah.
Now, my other exposure to the videos, I think I told you when I first officially met you, but I may not have.
Hmm.
But my mamaw, God rest her soul, as well as my papaw, God rest
Hmm.
both of them. They used to live in Beaver Creek, Ohio, back when I was a little kid, and usually every summer I'd go up to their house and stuff. I'd stay for about a week or so. Sometimes I'd even go up on spring break and the rare occasion Christmas break. You don't want to be in Ohio during Christmas break because they get a lot of snow,
You're
and
right.
I mean it's a lot more than
Asking
what
for
we get
trouble.
down here. Well, so the Myers stores, which are real big up there, and I know we got some in the central and northern part of Kentucky as well. Basically, is their version of Super Walmart.
Yeah.
Well, this one had a video rental place, and it wasn't a small dinky one. It was really pretty good size, and they had a bunch of VHSs, Coliseum videos
Hmm.
and stuff. I mean, from whether it was the pay-per-views or the specials, that they did, either it was overseas or dark matches that
Oh wow.
that some of the guys would, do voiceovers for and stuff for commentary. I mean, just needless to say, we frequented there
Oh yeah.
every time Andy, which that's what my mama called me. She said, and when Andy came up to Ohio, we always went to the Myers video rental, and I also had a couple of them wrestling buddies which I'm sure Ben, you might have had.
That was a little after my time,
Okay,
but Trevor had one.
okay.
He had Road Warrior Animal.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
really,
Oh yeah. One of the figurine
It's
things.
still
Yeah.
in his grandmother's house.
Oh yeah.
really
Yes,
Yeah.
he still
I could
has
take
that
you
one.
to it right now. I could bring it up here. I
nice.
know exactly where
I had
Should bring him to training.
you know what, that's perfectly good. Yeah, bring it to training, definitely.
Hell yeah.
Um, yeah, I had you're talking the pillow wrestling
It
buddy,
was it
or
was one of the about foot and a half foot tall
It's like a Cabbage Patch Kid on steroids,
yeah, it
okay,
does.
okay.
It looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid
but it's
with
got the
muscles.
hard plastic head.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
this one didn't have a hard plastic head. This was a this is full pillow
Oh
or
no,
pillow stuffing.
I didn't
Yeah,
have
that
anything
that
like
was
that.
Gen 1.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I had the Hulk Hogan because
Oh
back then
wow.
I was a Hulkamaniac, but then I found
Mm.
out
I think
how.
everybody was at one point in their life
Right,
or
Oh
another.
yeah.
right.
You take away some of the crap that he's done,
Mm.
shit that he said. He basically was there when they were smoothing the cornerstone of professional wrestling.
Right,
Okay, um, I had a foam finger.
really.
I had one of the yellow and red foam fingers because that same weekend that Dad took me to my first show, which was the Great American Bash. Well, the following Sunday they were at the Rosemont WWF at the time was at the Rosemont Horizon, so I got to see Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, Andre, um, Greg Valentine was there, Tito Santana. Um, let's see, Sergeant Slaughter, the Iron Sheik,
Mm.
back when they were feuding. So Sarge was still wearing the camouflage with the Smokey Bear, G.I. Joe.
Right, right, right.
But
I had a Hogan, I had a Macho King, and then I had a Sting
Oh
because
yeah.
WCW was having them come out as well. They had like Sting and Luger and some others.
Yeah.
Well, when I was 5, I was a sickly kid, and I remember I had to go to I can't remember if it was Lourdes or at the time I think it was called Western Baptist, but before it became Baptist Health Deaconess, it was one of those
Hmm.
two hospitals. And I had to get tubes put in my ears. I don't remember if this was the first or the second time, but I took my sting with me, and the doctor was asking all the people that was in the OR room, can y'all guess who this is? And one woman raised her hand. She's like, Lex Luger. And then I said, no, this is Sting. And I'm a
Hmm.
4 or 5 years old. And
oh
then the doctor says, this is the Stinger right here,
yeah,
Um, and then at one point, I was at a babysitter's house, and I won't mention her name, but I think she was doing a little illegal babysitting because she had way too many kids. If you catch my drift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so there were these two girls. They got a hold of they got a hold of the stinger and they were trying to yank him away from me. So I was trying to pull him back. They wound up yanking his right arm off.
Oh no.
Stuffing all over the place. Well, like I said, I won't mention the babysitter's name. She was nice enough to keep him overnight or so and perform
Surgery.
Emergency
emergency
surgery.
surgery on him. Yeah,
How long did it take Stinger to recover from his shoulder surgery?
it was instantaneous because before you know it, I was jumping off the furniture doing elbow drops and splashes, or at least attempting to.
I
So
need to see his orthopedic.
Yeah. You know,
Babysitter, I need you to reach out.
oh my gosh.
it's so funny. That I didn't have, you know, whenever I was starting to get more into it, I had the action figures. You know, I had the smaller, you know, 6 inch tall, you
Hmm.
know, standard issue action figures and stuff.
A lot of his first action figures that he had to play with as a kid were the action figures that my dad had bought me,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and mom did, because they weren't they weren't quite yet fully articulated.
Right.
Um, it was one solid leg that would rotate at the hip,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then you could twist the waist,
Hmm.
you could turn the neck, and you had two stationary arms that just rotated at the shoulder joint.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah.
But you know, and the little plastic ring with the little stretchy ropes that went
Yes,
around it.
sir.
I promise you, I went through a half dozen of those damn things
Oh yeah.
because mine had wooden ring posts. I had
Really?
my AWA ring had wooden ring posts, and it wasn't just a couple of slams into the turnbuckle. And Ric Flair was busting a ring post off. Hitting it that hard. You know, I guess this was before he learned to take that forward rolling bump into the corner and end up on the outside of the ring running down the apron.
Right.
But no, playing there, God man, I destroyed more. I destroyed at least 6 rings. Um, but I had. Let me tell you about those action figures. Uh, Stan the Lariat Hansen.
Mm.
Wow, how
Yeah.
about that?
Oh my God,
A lot of
dude.
people didn't even know Stan Hansen had an action
I,
figure,
I didn't. No.
right? Um, I had who was Nikita's partner? Boris Zukov,
Ivan Koloff.
maybe. Yeah.
He also had Crusher Khrushchev, who became Demolition
How in the
Smash.
world did they ever get that gimmick over?
Which one?
Crusher Khrushchev.
Uh,
He didn't even have a northern accent. This dude's accent. I was watching a video the other day on God Love Peacock, right?
right.
Because you can go back and watch all the territory stuff. This dude sounded like he was from Bad Street, Georgia.
Right.
Blue eyes, which I mean, I'm not being stereotypical here, but not even the slightest hint of a European accent at all. I'm just wondering how in the world they got that gimmick over.
I have no idea. Now, Nikita might have partnered up with Boris. I know Boris partnered up with Nikolai in WWF when they were the Bolsheviks,
I
but
think it was Ivan Koloff.
okay.
Ivan and Nikita Koloff.
Uncle,
Yeah.
I think he was called Uncle Ivan, so
Yeah.
to speak. So, um, my mama, like I said, I'd watch those videos. So I didn't know that there was a group of people that called it wrestling. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Di-
yeah.
I,
You don't know about wrestling?
back then as a kid, I did not. I
Uh-huh.
said, no, mama, it's wrestling. It's
Oh no.
I said it's WRESTLING. I said there's no A in it, mama. It's not called
It is.
wrestling.
It's RASSLIN with the little apostrophe.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's what we called it back in my day, Andy. We called it wrestling.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned about your mother slipping the bird.
Oh yeah.
So, actually, before I say this, we haven't said this yet. Fuck you, Kyle. Um,
I'm gonna say it for Kyle because he's not here to defend himself. Keep that same energy, bro.
oh man, he sends me that stuff on
You gotta
Messenger and stuff.
appreciate it. You gotta appreciate that the kid knows how to take that.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Because especially when you're in this business as early as he is, to be around to get ribbed by an entire class of a dozen trainees, and other workers in the business, He takes it on the chin pretty good.
He does, and I mean, I think that's why he'd be a good heel,
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
long run. But my Mimi, God rest her soul, that was my dad's mom. So she lived in Princeton, and sadly, she passed away about a decade ago. Actually, about 2 months before my mamaw did. But we would watch. Let's see what it wasn't WCW Saturday night. It was their worldwide or their WCW Pro shows they had on the Saturday mornings and stuff. And she hated the Disco Inferno. She absolutely
Oh,
hated him.
what a good gimmick,
And
though.
it was a good gimmick,
Oh,
yes, it was. But yeah, every time he came out to the ring, whether he, whether
Your
it was at
grandma liked him too.
oh, yeah.
Don't let her BS you. You're
she
watching watching her watching Disco Inferno come out and wiggling his hips put a little bit of slide in her effervescent. I'm telling you.
she would stare at that television and then she just, start shaking that hand with the middle finger up in the air
Uh-huh.
every time she saw him. And then,
Uh-huh.
of course, what was really funny about that character, after he'd lose a match, he'd look at the cameraman and say, "How's my hair?
Yeah.
How's my
Yeah,
hair?"
yeah. Oh, so good. Such a good gimmick. I actually got introduced to Inferno for the first time when I was playing an old N64 game.
Yes.
Hey,
My
hey.
my
Easy on
N64.
that old.
Okay, it's old to me. All right,
Vintage.
vintage. There you go. I can't really say old anymore because it came out around the time I was born. But anyway, like
That would technically make you
I don't want to hear it.
as old.
I don't want to hear it. I'm not in my 30s yet. But I got introduced to Disco Inferno and a lot of the WCW characters whenever I got that game. I paid $15 for an N64 at a flea market, and I just happened to get WCW versus NWO Revenge.
Okay, yeah.
And it had Disco Inferno. It had Sting around the time that he was
La
making the
Parka.
turn. La
Mhm,
Parka. It
mhm.
had a bunch of
Hoovy.
Hoovy. Yeah, it had Alex Wright. All of those guys. Goldberg when he was starting to get into it. It was the early NWO stuff. So it was
Mhm.
Wolfpack Nash, Wolfpack
Guess
Scott
what?
Hall. All of
What's
that.
that?
Guess where that is today? Still down here at his grandmother's house.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah. All of it is still down there.
So
So
what you're
like.
saying is we're gonna have to have a party, some will get together in the future, right?
Oh yeah. Oh
Absolutely.
yeah. But whenever I was out of tapes, whenever I couldn't watch the tapes anymore, I would make my own.
Mhm.
Playing N64 with characters that I only knew from those tapes because I
Gotcha.
didn't have any other media anywhere.
Right.
But that was a great introduction to that kind of era
Right.
because you also arguably one of the best wrestling games I've ever played in my entire life. It still holds up, and there's a really niche crowd of people who are still really into that game because of
Mhm.
how good it was for the time. There
Right.
was no other game like it at the time. Not until you get WWE 2000, and it
Mhm.
wasn't as good. But arguably, it was the better of the two. But you know, I digress. It was that was a great, great, great game for that time period of wrestling too.
I agree. I didn't have an N64. I had the original PlayStation, and the WCW versus the World had come out. That Sting's on the
Mm.
cover art for it, and I didn't know this until if I don't know if y'all have ever watched it, but there's a channel on YouTube called Wrestling Bios where he covers the Monday Night Wars, he covers wrestlers, he covers angles, all sorts of stuff. Real good channel. It's sounds like an English speaking fella, or someone from Europe basically. But he had covered that game. It was about a 20-minute video, but it wasn't until many years later. So they couldn't use because they use a lot of wrestlers from Japan and whatnot. They could obviously I think for licensing reasons they couldn't use their actual
They had
names.
to give
So
them different names. They did the same
exactly,
thing on
exactly, yeah. So they so I mean it's awesome that we both had games that have like the Great Muta, actually had Stan Hansen,
Oh yeah.
the late Hayabusa, Atsushi Onita, etc. I mean the list goes on
God
and
bless you.
on.
It's funny you guys are talking about video games. It's a shame that this isn't a video cast because I actually pulled up the very first wrestling game that I had. It came out with the Nintendo Entertainment System
Mm.
called Pro Wrestling. And if take a look at those graphics.
Oh man, that's like Super Mario Brothers graphics right there.
That's that's a little super pixelated. That
Daggum.
was the video game. That was the very first one that they
Wow.
came out with for the NES. What does that say that debuted? Release date 1986,
Yeah, 86
March of
in
87
Japan.
in Europe,
September
September
of
of
87.
87 in the US.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah, I never did have an N64. Hell, I had a PS2 up until 2011. Then I ventured to the Xbox 360. Mine.
I wonder
It
what that's worth today.
it was color.
$16. Shit. I think that's about what we paid for it.
Right. The first Xbox 360 I had, I bought it, and it was colored like R2D2 from Star Wars, and it had a
Oh, that's
wireless
sick.
controller that was golden like C3PO and stuff. But I had purchased the Legends of WrestleMania video game and stuff, which
Oh
was
yeah.
which I liked it. It gets a lot of hate from folks and stuff, but I mean, hey, we're seeing the legends, I mean,
Right, for
so
the
can't
artistic style. Yeah,
exactly.
I remember getting that one actually. I had it for PS3,
Yeah,
and that was another kind of really big point for me getting into a new era of that kind of wrestling.
right.
Because, like I said, I grew up on the WCW stuff, WCCW,
Mhm.
the tapes that I was able to get from him, and there wasn't a whole lot of WWE back then in those tapes, surprisingly. But
No, because most of that was pay per views,
Mhm.
and back then WWF wasn't doing a lot of pay per views.
It was just
right,
4 a year at the time.
It
Well,
yeah,
was it was just you know maybe what were we talking WrestleMania 7, 6, 7, maybe about the time that I got into it. What was
mm,
the first WrestleMania?
first WrestleMania was 1985.
Okay, so I hadn't even been in the into wrestling, uh, but maybe wrestling just been a couple of years old.
Yeah,
So there weren't all these big pay per views. Um, until WCW was doing a lot of them.
right.
They had WrestleMania. Um, they did have the Royal Rumble. There was no such thing as an elimination chamber.
Nope.
Um, WCW had Clash, but and then later they would have Halloween Havoc, um, Starcade, Starcade,
Yeah.
man, wow. Was it the original Starcade that the Midnight Express and the Road Warriors fought on the scaffold match?
Don't quote me on this, but I believe so.
That was killer.
Yeah.
That was killer. I was just saying, flashback of the childhood.
Mhm.
Didn't know exactly when that happened, but you know,
And the Midnights actually did another scaffold match, except they called it a Skywalker match, and
yes, they did.
it was with the Rock and Roll
Yes, it
Express.
was. I
And
saw that
if I remember correctly, because the original scaffold match you mentioned, that's when Cornette fell and blew both his knees out and
yeah,
stuff and all that. And I think they had before they did the next one, I think they lowered it by a few feet or something like that in case if they whenever they do come off, it's not going to have as heavy of an impact, I guess, so to speak. So, but yeah,
one. Yeah, that first one was up there.
yeah.
it was rickety too. I've watched it back a
Hmm.
couple of times, and they were on their way up, and it was already shaking up top.
And I mean, well, you got to think the Road Warriors, they're pushing combined weight 600 pounds, together with the two of them, and then you got the Midnight. That's adding an extra 450 to five. So I mean, you got a lot of weight up top, and
And of course, Jim Cornette back then was what buck 23 with sand in both his boots.
give or take, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank God they didn't get Big Bubba Rogers up there. They would have really been SOL at that
Holy!
point, and that was back when he was at his heaviest. You know what I'm saying? So, uh, yeah, Big Bubba Rogers. That was the late Big Boss Man for those of you that are fans of old school WWF. And God rest his soul as well.
Jim
Uh,
Cornette's bodyguard that his mama sent down there to look after him.
mm-hmm.
How they build that.
Oh yeah, man, I would love to be able to meet Jimmy Cornette. That would be a dream of mine. You
He's
know,
just right down the road.
who else just lives right down the road, man?
I mean, we can take a road trip. Roughhouse Rickard, are you listening? You ready for another road trip?
somewhere I just heard him yell, "No!"
No, Roughhouse. There's a hell yeah in there somewhere. Let's do it. Send it. Let's fuck it. Let's do it live.
Yeah. I know Cornette's not big on people showing up unexpected at Castle Cornet. I did hear that in one of his YouTube clips and stuff. So um,
I've listened to a lot of managers over the years. Don't get me wrong, give props to every one of these
oh
old school
yes,
managers,
absolutely,
but nobody had the gift of gab and could run that freaking mouth like Jim Cornette.
right.
And he didn't need no microphone. He didn't need a megaphone. A lot of his best stuff he was doing, and it was barely getting picked up by the ringside cameras.
Hmm.
I remember he was doing a match with the Midnight Express, and all you heard was him, but he didn't have no microphone.
Right.
But he got picked up by the ringside cameras, and a lot of his best stuff was it was just amazing. Guy's a true artist.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah. Um, Now, Trevor, you started training October. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm going to say this with you here. I've already told you this. Ben, I've
Mm.
told you this, and I've told others this. Brother, you've got a lot of potential. You've got a hell of a lot of potential. You're very athletic. You know your shit. And that day, dude, it just took that one day of working with you. Um, and
I appreciate
you're more than welcome. Hell, we were even warm up partners and stuff, doing the
that.
bear crawls and stuff and all
mm-hmm.
that. And I probably gave you a little too much, and took too much, much resistance off
Nah,
of you. But
nah.
I mean, dude, you took care of me when we were training, and I did the best I could to take care of you and stuff.
No, you
Uh,
did
to,
great.
I appreciate that. You're very, very respectful young
Thank you.
man, and Ben, you did a hell of a job with this young man. So,
I had help. I had a lot of help. I was a workaholic, man, and bless his heart, I had my own demons that I was fighting back then too,
sure.
and I wasn't the best dad, and there were times where he'd come spend the weekend with me, and I spent more time in the bottle than I did with my own kid,
Hmm.
and you know, uh,
You know, it's there's something to be learned about, the journey you can take with loved ones. You know, and this is I've said this to myself out loud. I've said this to other people. This is the closest that you and I have been in a long time, and there's nothing that I would give for it in the world.
and dude, it's amazing that it's the business
Hmm.
that has brought us to where we are today.
Yes,
Oh yeah,
sir.
absolutely. And being able to do this as a family, being able to share this generationally as a family, it was something that my papa got him into, you know,
Yeah,
and it was something that my papa perpetuated me being into, because there were months that I would just sit there and watch these tapes on repeat, play in NWO versus WCW Revenge or
Hmm.
whatever for years, and I would never hear a complaint, talking endlessly about wrestling with him. And
Yeah.
that was something that we all get to enjoy, all we all got to enjoy, as a family for years.
Hmm.
And to be able to have that now, though Papa is gone and has been for some time, it's still something that he and I definitely, you know, bond over very, very deeply and have for years,
Hmm.
you know. But it time heals all wounds, and
Hmm.
this has definitely been a highlight of my entire life, being able to do this alongside him, alongside you.
well, he looks at it through a different set of eyes than I do because I didn't. I had stepped away from the business completely. I could go to an occasional show, you know, but that was it.
Yeah.
So when I get that text message from him, will I train him,
Hmm.
dude? How many workers are out there that you can name right now that knows who my kid is? He could have gone up to. He's got a buddy that he I think went to college with, who's a wrestler in Tennessee.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So the kid had options.
Hmm.
I
He
can
could
name
have.
drop.
Should we plug?
Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt. I mean, he's an incredible talent. He's working down in. I don't know if they're still. I think they're based out of Memphis now, but Tyler Lemasters, an incredible worker.
Hmm.
Incredible worker. I've watched a lot of his stuff recently. He and I, we've been out of connection for a little bit now, but I've been trying to keep up with him a little bit.
Sure.
Try and get back in touch with him. But great worker,
Hmm.
and it just like being able to, I went to a couple of matches with him for the company he was working for at the time.
Hmm.
And to be able to, share that along the way, and that kind of reignited the spark of getting back into it for me too, because
Sure.
there was a long time whenever he was out of it, I was out of it. The social implications of still being into wrestling whenever you're in high school,
Hmm.
especially during the PG era of WWE.
Oh God.
Exactly. So it wasn't the coolest thing to be a fan of. So I
Sure.
kind of put that on the back burner for a long time.
So he's not talking about the Ivory lost her top incident.
Mm-mm.
That wasn't PG because that was live.
No, no, Ivory. That was hell. She was a mainstay during the Attitude Era. There,
Right.
a little bit toward in the first couple of years of the Ruthless Aggression era.
Yeah. So there's a huge weight of responsibility on my shoulder that he came to me. You know,
Right.
there's great workers out there he could have reached out to. I mean, he could have, he was living in Nashville just shortly, and it's a lot closer to Memphis
Hmm.
and other promotions down in Tennessee that he could have gone to. So when he sent me that message, it didn't take but a split second for that to weigh on me, and I was like, absolutely. So then the phone calls start getting made, and they were Nall was awesome enough to let me come back in to train my son, and so I told Derek and Josh, I said, I don't want to overstep, but if
Sure.
there's anything that I can do
Hmm.
to help you with your trainees, with anybody that you've got, coming in, I'm more than welcome to give you everything that I've got.
Sure.
And they acknowledged that, and I think it was Derek said challenge accepted.
Really.
you know, so when I stepped in, to start working with the kids, and God, we've got some amazing kids.
Yes.
We have got some talented kids in this training group right now, and it just to see how far that they have come
Hmm.
from October to in October to what was it, December. For 2 months we were only getting 1 day a month to train,
And that was usually the days of the shows, right?
usually the days of the shows, and we'd show up early, get the ring set up, and I'd get the kids out there and get them all lathered up. I didn't have a lot of time to dilly dally,
Sure.
so I cut out a lot of the old school stuff in the very beginning. Why should I waste these kids' time making them, you know, do some of the things that I had to endure when I can cut, into straight into the meat and potatoes with these kids and teach them wrestling.
Hmm.
Okay, um, so that's what it was like for the first couple of months, and then I started talking to, you know, Josh and Derek, and I was like, once a month, these kids are going to forget more in 29 days than I can teach them in 1 day,
Right.
and it's not beneficial.
Right.
So we need to start looking at other opportunities to get this ring set up, um, get these kids in here, because and I had a light schedule when I was breaking in because we had training over at the Payne Station on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, and they were running shows once a month at the Armory. Um, that really wasn't a training day. I mean, we were taking down the ring, setting up the ring, paying dues, working security and some refereeing, but as far as actual training, physical wrestling training, we weren't doing a whole lot of that on those days.
Sure.
Then we have to get back out there and get the ring set up, for training uh, on that following Tuesday. When I say we, yeah, there was a list of distinguished individuals in my class as well, especially if you have followed Western Kentucky Independent Wrestling. Um, and I'm going to give a shout out to one of our board members, and because when I came in, it was with Damage Inc. before they were officially Damage Inc. Viper and Grunge. You know, God rest his soul. Miss you, brother. We love you. We think about you all the time down here. You can't do a show without you crossing my mind, man. I wasn't as close with Grunge as Viper were, as you know others have told you on the show. They lived their brotherhood. They were inside and out, and we just working shows, not even knowing that they were working Coliseum when I started working at the Coliseum. You know, we were close, but we weren't real close. You know what I'm saying? And just it getting back to, we had to train, so
Right.
we gotta get these kids in here more often, and so we started renting the gym on weekends that we didn't have a show, and I started talking to the guys and started talking to the trainees, and I was like, hey, we can do this, you know, but it's going to cost us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Derek and Josh are renting the shows to do their show. Hey, that's a free training day. We ain't got to pay. We'll let them pay. We'll let the house pay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good training opportunity for them. So, and instead of killing the pockets of these kids, uh, it was like, hey, let's just raise enough money on everybody donating toward the rental of the building so we can get in there and get some more training in. And so now we're doing training at least 3 weekends a month, and this is why, as you plugged at the beginning of the show, that I started the GoFundMe to get a permanent facility so that we don't have to pay an ungodly amount of overhead, because you can't rent a building around in Hopkins County, uh, decent enough where you're not having to charge the kids $500 to $700 a month in rent, because you're going to have power bill and you're going to have rental fees, and you can't touch nothing. And I haven't seen anything under $1,000 a month. Okay, and that's cutting deep, especially
Yeah.
when you start getting into these young kids that are working part-time jobs and not making a whole lot of money. So we're trying to raise money to build the facility.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an update into where we are with the donations that we've received so far is, we have the ring posts.
Really?
We have, yeah. And when I say we have the ring post, I took the money that has been donated so far, and I was able to buy some of the metal to build them.
Okay.
I'm a certified welder. I did all the welding. I hope my boss ain't listening, because I found some scrap metal out behind the shop. He don't listen to this stuff anyway. So, and we're in the process of building a ring by specific design to the ring that I trained in. So, uh, but I mean, you're not going to touch a pair of ropes, a set of ropes and turnbuckles under 800.
Mm.
You can't touch a mat for, you know, just a canvas mat. All that stuff is expensive. But we have the land. We have an acre of ground that has been donated.
Nice.
So, yeah. So I had to, I'm getting ready to have to start up an LLC so we can transfer all of that information into, so that it protects the property owner.
Sure.
And so we got the land. So now we're trying to get a building, and I think I've got the construction crew that has donated their time as soon as we can raise enough funds for the building materials.
Sure.
And one of the trainees, one of the trainees' dads is a licensed electrician, and
Okay.
I got some residential and commercial electrical experience. So we're going to go in there. We're going to donate our time and do the wiring, because it's not really going to need a whole lot.
Sure.
Probably a single stall bathroom. Maybe
Preferably.
y'all just have to draw a number. Uh, obviously we're going to need a sink, so there's going to be some light plumbing in there. You guys can go wash your nasty selves at home. We don't need a 16 head shower in there. Um, and we're just going to open up the doors, till it gets real late into the summer, and we'll just push the time back from early mornings in the hottest part of the day until we can get a good HVAC unit donated, preferably.
Sure.
Mike, that was your cue. Start talking to your boss. Anybody want to guess who Mike is or what he does for a living?
Let's see. Let's say not a plumber, but definitely HVAC related.
Exactly. And I'm hoping that we can build a large enough facility that we can actually put some weight training equipment into. Right now, just like any other indie uh, wrestler, these kids have got their own gym memberships that they're having to pay for, to get bulked up and everything like that. So, we'd like to put some weight equipment, some weight training equipment in there. Um, we recently purchased a crash pad, which is awesome
Yes.
because it's when you're taking these kids and you're asking them to put all of their faith and confidence in you that you're not going to break their neck, you're not going to kill them while they're paying you to kill them.
Right.
you know, um, I gotta treat them like my own children. I gotta get them to the diving board and show them it's okay to jump off the high dive into the water. It's gonna be scary, but you're not gonna die. You know,
Right.
and so I knew that we got some talented, athletic kids in there. Um, Not to give anything away, but Trevor was on the dive team for
Really?
high school when he was growing up.
Wow.
So I knew it wasn't going to be nothing to get him. Hey, get up there and flip. You know,
Right.
I've seen what he can do off of a diving board,
Right.
and that was exactly what happened. We got the crash pad and drove up what hour and 45 minutes all the way into Creel Springs, Illinois, like 212 miles one way. We found it. This dude was doing some MMA and freestyle wrestling training
Right.
out of his garage, but it was a whole lot more mat than he needed. And I said, well, it's probably more mat than I need, but for the price, I'm going to jump on it.
Sure.
We saved so much money on that
Oh
on
yeah.
that crash pad. And me and one of the trainees went up there and picked it up, threw it in the back end of the truck, hauled butt home. And the very next training session, we drug it out, see who was going to fly, who wasn't going to fly, and it was moonsault mania from the word go. It was insane.
It's been an absolute blast.
It,
Being able to do that has been really hugely developmental for kind of the morale of the trainees too.
Yeah, it's phenomenal because I'm in the gym with these guys all day long. We'll get to the building and we'll start working out, start setting the ring up at 8:30 in the morning.
right.
So by 9 o'clock, the ring's up. Everybody's getting stretched. Everybody's going through calisthenics. We're running laps. I'm smoking them. We're doing push-ups, mountain climbers, the whole rigmarole. And then we get into the ring for some ring training. Next thing you know, it's 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the
Yeah.
p.m. Okay, and I've mentioned just once that I'm no spring chicken, so to be able to get in the ring with those kids, and stay in the ring and working with those kids all day long. Yeah, I'm just saying you might want to start isolating those muscle groups. I attribute it to all the preservatives that's in all of the MREs that I ate while I was in the service.
I feel you. I feel you.
So, we want to get a more permanent facility so that we don't have to do those 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. workouts 3 times a month. We can get them in there on weekday nights, those who can come, Saturdays and Sundays. Yeah, I know it's tough, especially when you're working, second shift. Even if you're off on the day that we train, you're not off on that day because you just got off work at what 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning.
About 6:30 in the
Yeah,
morning. Now, if it's cold, I usually got to let my engine warm up. I'm kind of a stickler on that. Some people just jump in with a cold engine, take off. Nah, mine's got to
right.
warm up. So for me, yeah, it'd be about almost 8 o'clock before I get
Yeah,
home and try to get some sleep.
and try to get some sleep, and then Yeah, you might as well just forget sleep. Come on over to the training facility. You know,
Just pass out.
yeah, right there. We'll push the crash pad over into the corner and put a blanket on you or something,
I appreciate that.
and then we'll wake you up when it's time. Work out again. But and these kids are so talented and they're so great. But bringing in that crash pad and watching them get up there, knowing that, I mean, what this crash pad's like 2 feet thick.
Yeah.
It's going to break their heart when I start taking that away.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we're looking into some thinner mats already to start stepping them down because you just gotta you have to get to the point where you're going to be able to perform the same way in the ring without a crash pad, you know. But it's a great way to start, and
Right.
and you see what you're capable of. We've got a young lady in that training room or in that training group right now who I have watched her self confidence level just skyrocket once she started working off the top turnbuckle with the crash pad alone,
Right.
and it is motivating to the kids because we did the last training session. We didn't even pull it out. We left it in the back in its storage, and we went all through that training session. The kids did everything that I asked them to do. They're really in there sacrificing, and it means a lot to me
Mm-hmm.
to see them putting their heart and soul, hard work, blood, sweat, tears, dedication, broken shoulders, into all this. So, so it means a lot to me.
Right.
So we had maybe hour left in the training session. We are going to cut out a little bit early so let everybody go home, watch the elimination chamber. So if you want to talk about that here in a little bit,
Sure.
be glad to.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine with me, buddy.
And so I said, you guys have hustled out here. You've sweated. You've busted your tails out here. So for the last little bit of time we got, I'm going to let y'all choose what we work on next, what we do next. So I said, it's up to you. And they said,
Yeah, can we get the crash pad?
so I was like, go get the crash pad.
Sure.
And again, it was Moonsault City.
Right.
And, there's so many talented kids in there. And now we're attracting other kids,
Mm-hmm.
other talented, young talented individuals. And we're starting to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I look forward to seeing this new crop of upcoming young talent because there's going to be some game changers in there.
Yeah.
We've got probably the best looking crop of trainees right now that I've seen probably in my 26 some odd years. What is it? 2025. All right, y'all have to do the math on that. I came home from the Marine Corps and started training in '98.
27. Yep.
27 years. Okay. So in 27 years this month.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and they are extremely talented, and them kids get in there and they give it 100%.
Yep.
And I am damn proud of them.
Yep.
I told them on day one or training day one, I would never be able to remember all their names.
Sure.
And last training session, I got everybody lined up, and we're doing our calisthenics, and I fired off first name, last name, first name, last name, and I've gotten to know these kids, and they're beautiful individuals. They really are, and some of them are legitimate kids,
Yep.
Some of these kids are still, you know, young enough they don't want to be called kids, but
Sure.
or old enough they don't want to be called kids, but to me they're all kids,
Right.
and I get the opportunity to talk to them one on one, not very often because there's a lot of information I'm putting out there to them, and I demand I run a pretty good pretty tight ship out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard work. I mean, I've done all kinds of sports all my life between football and soccer and baseball and diving, and I've worked the hardest doing this, but it has been one of the most rewarding situations and sports that I've been a part of in my entire life.
And,
Just
and see, I know you listen to the episodes. Trevor, I don't know if you listened to my episode with Coy Daniels, but we were talking about sports we played in high school. I played high school ball myself, but I did mainly summer league ball. But the couple of years I played high school ball, we did a lot of running. We did a lot of this, that, and the other. Running the bases, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, it wore you out, but
Oh yeah.
the training session, the full training session I was actually able to be in back in January.
Oh
I mean, heck, I mean, even though I was stretched, I wound up pulling a hamstring,
yeah.
and your dad said, "Well, why didn't you say something?" And I said, "Well, I won't say it on here, but
Yeah, you
uh,
will.
okay." I said, "Well, I didn't want to look like a pussy, basically. That's why I didn't say anything." And the funny thing is, 2 days later, I was at the gym stretching, and it wound up re-aggravating that pulled
Oh
hammy and
goodness.
stuff and all that. Yeah, but yeah, that was pretty grueling, you
Oh
know.
no, yeah, it's tough. The first session that I practiced and trained, I was
I thought he was gonna
sore.
quit.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah, he thought I was gonna quit.
Hey, don't let anybody, don't let anybody try to convince you that I take it easy on this kid. I
Oh, Lord.
expect more out of him than I do any of the rest of
Sure.
Yeah,
it. I'm not just putting my signature or my seal of approval or my stamp on it. This has got my name on
Sure.
it, and I do. I expect more out of him than I do any of the rest of them.
And that's understandable because like my dad coached some of my little league teams and
oh
stuff and
yeah,
all that.
oh yeah, yeah. He coached a couple of
Yeah,
mine.
he expected more out of me and stuff than everybody
Absolutely.
else.
I benched my own kid in a t-ball game.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What?
Absolutely benched me in a game because I was out in the. I think I was playing what was it, second base. I was playing second base, and he caught me making sandcastles at second base.
Honestly, that damn. The fact that you made a sandcastle out of
I was trying. It wasn't
okay.
very. It wasn't. It wasn't holding up. But like, yeah, it was. I was in the next practice session. I think everybody else was hitting off y'all had the pitching machine out, and I was doing laps.
Oh dang.
So no, he doesn't go easy on me by any means, but it has made me appreciate being able to put in the work that much more. You
Sure.
know, the first session, the first training session, I don't think I could get out of bed right the first 3 days because my body wasn't used to it. You know, we had gone in there and gone full hog. Like
Sure.
I was just, accepting, catching whatever they threw at me. You know, and once you get past like over that hill, you know, it starts to hurt less each day after training. Like this past
It's called
weekend,
nerve damage.
right? So now, like it'll hurt for the first day or two, but then after that, I feel perfectly fine,
Yeah,
and
as he stretches.
as I stretch and trying to realign my back, but it is really really rewarding to be able to go out there and just go as hard as you can,
Yeah.
and then feel it the next couple days because you did something.
Right.
You know.
If I can give any advice to you, obviously I'm not old enough to be your dad, but I am old enough to be like a older brother to
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
You're the same age as my younger brother,
Yeah.
and Ben, obviously he's you know
I'm
uh,
an old
he's old enough to be like a bigger
man.
like a big brother to me. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with some of the others in the business, but um, whenever I told you earlier, again, putting you over and stuff and everything, um, stay with it because so back in '09, and I've told you this. I don't know if I've told Ben this though.
No, you haven't told me, but I've heard it mentioned on a couple of the previous podcasts.
All right. Well,
So that was a question that I had for you, Mister Grizzly Cave, Mister
sure.
Grizzly in the Cave. I've heard that you did some training with old school wrestling out of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Tell us about that.
Well, it was actually they were based out of Callaway County in they it's a small town outside of Murray. I think it's Hardin or whatever. Anyways, it was old school wrestling. It was run by Bad Boy Phillips and really good guy. So a guy that worked out at the gym that I worked out at, it was called the Ye Old Iron Sweatshop.
The what?
The Ye Y-E Old Iron Sweatshop. It had a big name. Uh, and the old I think was spelled OLDE
Yeah.
actually.
Oh,
The
so it's old English.
that's what the sign looked
Yeah,
like,
Yeah.
yeah. But it
okay.
also had like barbell, design and stuff on it too. It's pretty badass gym. It was in
Right next to the library.
oh, you're gonna love this. It was connected to the tuxedo place, one of the tuxedo places.
Oh, the
Oh,
linen
nice.
store.
There you go.